One Piece, Who Made Him the Pirate King? Part 2. 5-Star Platinum Trophy. Storm looked at the magnificent, big trophy in the sky, and his eyes lit up with excitement. He is worthy of being the most powerful prisoner in the city. I approve of the quality of the Jailerman Trophy. Storm put away the Platinum Trophy, and controlled the clay giants to move away from the unconscious Minnow Zebra. A Jailer Beast. Defeating it will give you a 5-star trophy. Based on Storm's previous experience fighting against the Blue Water Monkeys, Minnow Zebra can at least continue to provide a 4-star gold trophy. Just beat him again. Storm reiterated that his action was not a personal revenge. All for the higher level, big trophy. It didn't take a while. The Minnow Zebra slowly woke up. The biggest advantage of the animal-type Devil Fruit is its durability. Jailerman was originally an animal-type Devil Fruit user who failed to awaken, although they have lost their human wisdom. But you also gain greater endurance and recovery. Sit-ups, no problem. The Minnow Zebra shook his still confused head. It raised its head and looked around, but did not see the group of white giants that it had been unable to kill just now. There was only the stranger that was easily knocked away by it before. Merely human. The Minnow Zebra snorted and regained his confidence. It picked up the spherical mace that had fallen to the ground, rubbed its hooves on the ground a few times, and charged towards Storm again. After resting for half an hour, Storm has now recovered to his best condition. With the experience of the last battle, Storm no longer uses Haki recklessly. He mainly relies on the 6 styles to deal with the Minnow Zebra, and only uses the power of Haki when necessary. With the help of Minnow Zebra, the tireless jailer, Storm continued to hone his Armament Haki and Observation Haki. The roar of battle continued. Also in the director's office on the 4th level of the Burning Hell, Magellan was sitting on the toilet, and a subtle feeling of pleasure suddenly emerged on his face which had turned purple from holding back his breath. He just felt a sharp pain in his abdomen and was about to detoxify thoroughly. But suddenly a deafening explosion sounded nearby. Boom. Magellan only felt his anus tighten, and the urge to defecate disappeared without a trace in an instant. Who is he? Does he have any sense of public morality? You're making so much noise in broad daylight, can't you just sit quietly in jail? Is it still possible for people to have diarrhea properly? Magellan, furious, pulled up his trousers, took 2 steps at a time, and ran out of the bathroom. Who is it? Magellan rushed to the monitoring room of the Burning Hell, trying to find the culprit who interfered with his detoxification work. Who is causing trouble in the prison? If the troublemakers are prisoners pushed into the city, Magellan swore that he would stuff that guy into the ass of the poison giant soldier. The prison guards in the monitoring room had not yet noticed the director's arrival. They were all watching the surveillance footage. Amazing. The chief jailer is truly amazing. Whether it's the deputy director or the jailer beast, none of them are his match. Giant Legion. The invincible Giant Legion appears again. Although they were watching the surveillance video, the prison guards suddenly cheered enthusiastically, as if they were watching a great action movie. Chief Jailer. Jailer Beast. Magellan's eyes widened, he roughly figured out the identity of the suspect. But what about this giant army that the jailers are talking about? Magellan looked intently at the real-time surveillance footage transmitted by the Den Den Mushi. Seeing that Storm was running out of energy, he summoned a group of clay giants and launched a brutal fight against the Minnow Zebra. Is this Storm? Magellan rubbed his eyes in disbelief. How come the Minnow Zebra was so weak in his hands, like a zebra rag doll? What happened in the monitoring room? Storm is currently unknown. All he knew was that the Minnow Zebra soon provided another golden trophy. Defeating a target repeatedly in a short period of time will cause the quality of the opponent's trophy to decline. Storm sat cross-legged on the ground, recovering his strength and waiting for the Minoan to wake up again. Does this mean that the big trophy also has a cooldown period? One more thing, that is, to what extent will the quality of the Minnow Zebra trophy decline? It didn't take long. Storm's doubts were answered. Silver trophy, Minnow Zebra. Trophy star, 3 stars. That's enough. No need to fight anymore. Storm put away the silver trophy and prepared to look for his next victim, crossed out, the next Jailerman. A Jailer Beast can provide a 5-star trophy and a 4-star trophy. Mino Zebra, Mino Cow, Mino Koala, Mino Rhino, these are the 4 5-star trophies. You definitely can't miss it. Before going to find the next Jailerman, Storm first threw the silver trophy he had just won into the swordsmanship. Swordsmanship, 3 stars. The only 1-star ability right now is spearmanship, which looks a bit weird. Storm thought about it and decided to find an opportunity to upgrade both his swordsmanship and spearsmanship abilities to 4 stars. It doesn't take too much energy anyway. The focus is still on the gold trophy and the platinum trophy. Storm's sight was fixed on the clay fruit. After he continued to add points, the level of clay fruit reached 4.5 stars. Storm threw in a golden trophy on the spot. Clay fruit became his first 5-star ability. Followed by the only 5-star platinum trophy was also thrown into the clay fruit by him. Clay fruit, 4.5 stars. We are only 1 step away from 6 stars. Second Jailer Beast, get in the bowl. A sharp red light flashed in Storm's eyes, and he unfolded his observation haki. The voices from the outside world were captured one by his observation haki. At this moment, Storm sensed that an extremely powerful target was approaching him. But the aura emitted by the opponent is even stronger than that of the Minoan zebra. Director. Storm used Shave to rush over quickly and saw Magellan walking slowly towards him. Ah, Storm. While greeting, Magellan's face twisted inexplicably and he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. What were you doing just now? Manage the prison. Storm replied calmly. The blue gorilla, the Sphinx, and the Jailer Beast are all creatures with low intelligence. It takes a lot of effort to manage these prisons well. I know. Magellan nodded and was about to say something. But when he said the last word, his tone suddenly rose a lot, and his legs couldn't help but clamp together. Storm could vaguely see that a wisp of light purple poisonous mist was emanating from the corners of Magellan's mouth. Director. Storm involuntarily took a step back to avoid the invasion of poisonous gas. You shouldn't have the habit of urinating and defecating anywhere, right? Although this is a normal physiological activity for animals, I still recommend that you see a doctor. Haha. Magellan laughed dryly twice and reminded word by word. It's okay to manage the prison. But don't make too much noise. Absolutely. Don't be Shiryu. After saying this, Magellan immediately ran away with his butt between his legs. I don't know if it's an illusion. Storm seemed to see purple smoke coming out from behind the director's butt. Never become Shiryu. Storm looked at Magellan's back and shook his head. Who wants to be a lost cause? Storm threw Magellan's teachings to the winds. His observation haki did not capture the breath of the second Jailerman. But it doesn't matter, move forward into the city, there are plenty of surveillance den mushi. Storm came to the monitoring room of the burning hell and with the help of the powerful monitoring system, he instantly locked the position of the second Jailer Beast. The Platinum Trophy hunting operation has begun. In the next few days, Storm is constantly looking for Jailer Beasts to compete with and hone himself. With the help of several Jailer Beasts, Storm trained armament haki in the morning, observation haki in the afternoon, and life return after every 3 meals. These 4-star abilities were all mastered by him thoroughly. Storm can now use the 2-color domineering in battle very freely, and he can make sure that no domineering is wasted. The combat endurance time is greatly improved. In addition to improving one's own abilities, Storm's biggest reward was the big trophy provided by the 4 Jailer Beasts. Let's put aside the Mino Zebra's big trophy. Mino Cow, Mino Koala, and Mino Rhino provided Storm with a total of 3 platinum trophies and 3 gold trophies. Storm has not used the 3 platinum trophies for the time being. He just used up all 3 gold trophies. Storm invested 2 gold trophies in the endurance attribute and 1 in the speed attribute. These 2 attributes have become endurance, 5 stars. Speed, 4.5 stars. After Storm has completely mastered his rapidly increased physique, attributes and clay fruit abilities. It just happened to be the day when Shilua ended his confinement and left the extreme cold hell. Burning Hell, Director's Office. Several big shots in the city gathered together. We all came here under the orders of the director. Magellan's idea was simple. He wanted to take this opportunity to ease the relationship between Storm and Shirley. No matter how the conflict between the two people broke out before. Now let's put aside our past grudges and work together to govern and advance the city. Boom. The door of the director's office was pushed open from the outside. Shilio, who seemed to still have a hint of coldness on him, stepped into the office from the outside. At Magellan's signal, Storm went forward and walked in front of Shirley. Mr. Deputy Director. Storm looked at Shirley, who was so close to him, and a sunny smile appeared on his face. The director wants us to put aside our differences, but I think it's too late, but it's soon. Storm suddenly raised his right fist, gathered all his strength into it, and smashed it hard towards Shirley's face. The deep dark armament hockey covered the surface of his fist, adding a bit more power. Shirley never expected that Storm would attack him in front of Magellan. Caught off guard, Shirley was hit directly on the left cheek by Storm. Workplace, face-breaking punch. Storm's fist wrapped in armament hockey hit Shiryu's face hard. The latter's jaw shook violently and deformed in a horrifying way. The sticky blood mixed with a few white teeth drew a graceful arc in the air above the director's office. Under this powerful force, Shiryu's body flew backwards and smashed directly into the wall of the director's office. There was a deathly silence. An eye for an eye, blood for blood. This is my style. Storm shook his fist and turned to look at Magellan, who had a dazed expression. Director, give me a ticket to the extreme cold hell. Send Storm to the freezing hell. After all, Magellan is the director of Impel Down, and his reaction speed is the fastest among the few people. We must not let him and Shilio have a head-on conflict again. However, no matter how fast the director speaks, it was no faster than the anger rising in the deputy director's mind. Coke Road. You bastard. Accompanied by a roar with obvious air leakage. With his cheek bruised, Shilu climbed up from the messy ground. He had just finished his vacation in the extreme cold hell, and before he had time to retrieve his weapon, he was taken directly to the director's office. But even without the famous sword, Thunderstorm, in hand, Shilio is still a powerful swordsman. With bare hands, he rushed towards Storm at full speed, his right fist raised high with a heavy dark color. Armed and domineering. Go to hell, you brat. In a rage, Shirley burst out with unimaginable speed and came in front of Storm like lightning. Even Magellan was a little slow to react. However, Storm, who had been on guard against the opponent's backup attack, clearly captured Shiryu's attack route. He swung his right fist towards Shiryu, white clay wrapped around the surface of his fist, and powerful armament hockey was entangled with it. Armed giant fist. Boom. Two armed iron fists, one large and one small, collided heavily. There was a sudden explosion like a bolt from the blue in the director's office. With the point where Storm and Shirley's fists collided as the center, a rolling wave of air exploded, impacting everything around. There seemed to be a violent hurricane in the room, and all kinds of debris flew in the air and crashed into the walls. The crackling noise was constant. So strong. Both of them are so strong. Ah, my director's office. Little Sadie, Domino, and Hannibal, the three spectators, were forced to step aside and try to stay away from the core area of the battle. But Magellan had no such concerns. You too. A few drops of dark purple venom flowed from Magellan's forehead, and the next second his entire body was covered with the horrible poison. As the director of Advanced City, the strength that Magellan unleashed in prison was in no way inferior to that of a Navy admiral. Poison Dragon. Just the blink of an eye. Magellan then released an enormous dark purple poisonous dragon. The terrifying poisonous dragon emitting a pungent poisonous gas opened its bloody mouth and instantly swallowed the two people who were in a stalemate into its mouth. The last time was in the prison cafeteria. The poisonous dragon released by Magellan only served as a deterrent. But this time in the office, he fully unleashed the terrifying power of the poison fruit. When the poisonous dragon's venom spills onto the ground, The two people who had just been bitten by the poisonous dragon also appeared. Shilio's whole body was covered with poison. He knelt on one knee with a purple face, obviously severely poisoned. On the other hand, Storm. The white clay turned into a human-shaped armor, protecting him in all directions without any blind spots. As he waited for the dragon's venom to dissipate, the clay armor with its pits and dents disappeared as well. Storm, unharmed, appeared in front of everyone. Hannibal. Magellan stared at Storm for a while, and suddenly called out the name of the chief guard. Send Storm to the freezing hell. The director repeated what he had said before and added some details. 3 days of confinement. No one is allowed to visit him without my order. Hannibal carefully avoided the venom on the floor, walked to Storm's side, and tugged at the corner of his clothes. Storm followed Hannibal out of the director's office. The two walked together down the aisle of the burning hell. Only after they were completely away from the director's office did Hannibal breathe a sigh of relief. Storm, Hannibal shook his head, looking worried. I told you a long time ago, don't mess with Shilio, that guy is a lunatic. I didn't provoke that guy, have you forgotten? He provoked me first. Storm reminded. Before in the cafeteria, it was Shilu who attacked someone with a knife first. I was stabbed by someone, I can't just do nothing, right? The last cafeteria encounter. If it weren't for the special ability of the clay fruit, Storm might really be seriously injured by that guy Shirlio. How can I not take revenge for such a great hatred? This is the only regret Storm has now. It was because his punch just now was not strong enough. He failed to knock Shilio down in one go. If only that workplace face-breaking punch was powerful enough. Storm can see the big trophy of the deputy director of Impel Down. What a pity. Hannibal was unaware of Storm's disappointment. But he couldn't help but glance at Storm. Yes, it was Shilu who attacked first, but did he get any benefit from you? If Hannibal remembered correctly. In the 2 battles between Storm and Shirlio, Shirlio was more seriously injured each time. As for Storm, has this guy's clothes ever gotten dirty? Even if it is dirty, it is probably because it is stained with Shilio's blood, right? Hannibal shook his head in his heart and chose to skip the topic of Shilio. Although he was very worried that Shirlio would take revenge on Storm later. But judging from the strength Storm had just shown, the other party may not need his worry. Magellan is really angry this time. Hannibal turned the conversation to the topic of the extremely cold hell. The 5th floor is really not a place for people to stay. After Magellan calms down, I'll go see if I can help you move to another floor. It's not necessary. Storm quickly called a halt. He appreciated Hannibal's kindness. But he really wanted to go to the extreme cold hell. Just now, Storm beat Shilio in public in the director's office. The main purpose is to vent anger. The secondary purpose is to go to the extreme cold hell. Since Shilu can be punished by being imprisoned in the extreme cold hell by beating his fellow prisoners, there's no reason why Storm can't do it. Storm now needs a large amount of gold trophies to continue to improve his abilities. The extremely cold hell is filled with prisoners with bounties worth over 100 million yuan. Storm has long wanted to go trophy hunting in the freezing hell. Beat Shiryu in public. This is Storm's plan to go to prison. Hannibal had no idea of this. He thought that Storm didn't let him take action because he was worried that he would lose points with Magellan. Storm. Hannibal was first moved to tears, then quickly cheered up. Don't worry. I will definitely help you change floors. Hannibal. Storm was very touched, and then rejected the other party's kindness again. You don't want Shilio to know that you tried to interfere with the director's order, right? Hiryu. Hannibal suddenly stuttered. A person's name, the shadow of a tree. Hannibal never cared about exposing his ambitions in front of Magellan. Because he knew that Magellan was actually a good man. But Shiryu? That bastard really knows how to chop people with a knife. I'm sorry, Storm. Hannibal's mental state suddenly became depressed. I'm so useless. Storm felt a little sorry. But for the sake of the trophy hunting plan, he had to put Hannibal in a difficult position again. But before he could open his mouth to comfort her, Hannibal was inexplicably angry again. One day, I want to be the director of Impel Down. Storm patted Hannibal on the shoulder. Come on. Since we have decided to handle the matter impartially. Hannibal and Storm went directly to the first floor above the sea, to the office of the chief jailer. Although I think it's totally unnecessary, I'll still put the weapon here. Hannibal pointed at the wine iron or saber on Storm's waist and couldn't help but complain. Come to think of it, I've never seen you use a knife before, so why do you carry it with you? Of course it's because he's handsome. Okay. Ahem, actually I also used a knife in my early years. In the early years? Hannibal rubbed his forehead speechlessly. How old are you this year? Oh, why am I talking about this topic? Storm took out the iron or saber and sea stone slingshot together and placed them on a special shelf. At this moment, the Den Den Mushi nearby suddenly rang. Brew brew. It's not the Den Den Mushi of Impel Down. It is Storm's personal Den Den Mushi. Storm glanced at Hannibal and casually picked up the Den Den Mushi. Ah la la. Storm didn't wait for the person on the other end of the Den Den Mushi to finish his words and gave a concise reply. Go to jail immediately, don't bother me. Pat. After saying this, Storm hung up the Den Den Mushi. Hannibal looked over curiously. Who? Whoever he is, it's not Magellan. Storm put away his private Den Den Mushi and pushed Hannibal out of his office. Let's go to the freezing hell together. I heard from the jailers before that you can go through the extremely cold hell with bare hands without wearing protective clothing. Ha. Ha ha. Hannibal gave a dry laugh. After all, I am going to be the man who will become the director of Impel Down City. The Den Den Mushi sighed. Paradise, on a calm sea. Akiji was riding a bicycle, listening to the dead tone coming out of the receiver in a daze. What did he just hear? Ah, it must be because I slept for too long. My mind is a little fuzzy. Akiji scratched his messy afro. You must have dialed the wrong number just now. Boo-boo. Akiji's personal Den Den Mushi then made a special sound. The shaking of the head only meant one thing. The number is correct. How could be? Akiji, who didn't believe it, called again. But this time, all he heard was a burst of blind sound. Storm's Den Den Mushi is no longer accessible. I remember Storm went to Impel Down to be a jailer, right? Akiji and Den Den Mushi stared at each other, and the harsh blind sound echoed far away over the sea. Who put him in jail? It's an extremely cold hell, with biting cold wind. Storm sat cross-legged in the solitary cell, and the breath he exhaled quickly turned into white mist. It's just as cold as the rumors say. Storm raised his right hand and moved his 5 fingers a few times, without feeling any stiffness at all. Fortunately, I upgraded the endurance attribute to 5 stars earlier. Otherwise, a 4-star physique cannot withstand the cold air of the extremely cold hell. Storm looked out. His gaze passed over the frost-stained bars and reached the solitary cell opposite. The prisoner in the cell, with a bounty of over 100 million yuan, was covered in ice all over his body, without any sign of life. This prisoner was frozen to death by the extreme environment of the Arctic hell. What a waste of a golden trophy. Storm's regret flashed away in his heart. He deployed his own observation hockey to explore the outer world. In Storm's perception, the shivering Hannibal has disappeared into the extremely cold hell with a group of prison guards in protective clothing. Well, according to rumors, the warden is not afraid of extreme cold or heat. It seems that this is indeed just a rumor. Anyway, Hannibal finally left. Storm was relieved. He took the initiative to enter the extremely cold hell, not because he really wanted to go to jail. He came for the big trophy. Compared to the above layers of hell, not only are there more powerful prisoners imprisoned in the extreme cold hell, but there are also no surveillance Den Den Mushi. The vitality of the Den Den Mushi is not as strong as imagined. It simply cannot withstand the horrific low temperatures of the extreme cold hell. Excluding the 5.5 th floor that has not been discovered by others yet, the new Ladyboy Paradise is not mentioned. The extreme cold hell is one of the rare monitoring blind spots in the city. This also means Storm's free time has finally arrived. Sharpening knives does not miss woodcutters. Storm did not start the trophy hunt right away, but instead called out his own big trophy. A platinum trophy obtained by defeating 4 jailer mons. Storm only used 1 and still had 3 left. Now is a good time to add some. Storm took a deep breath and threw a platinum trophy into the clay fruit. Clay fruit, 6 stars. There are currently 2 platinum trophies left. Storm originally intended to invest them into his own physique attribute. But there is a shortage of supplies in the extremely cold hell. If Storm chose to increase his physique now, he would probably be hungry for several days. When the confinement is over, I will add points to the endurance attribute. Storm put away the 2 platinum trophies and turned to look at the clay fruit that had been upgraded to 6 stars. It seemed like endless inspiration exploded in his mind. All of a sudden, Storm realized the difference between 5.5 stars and 6 stars. He stretched out his right hand, pressed it on the floor of the cell, and suddenly activated the power of the clay fruit. Under the influence of the power of the devil fruit, the solid frozen soil of the extreme cold hell, which had been frozen for who knows how many years, softened instantly. Storm's right arm then sank downwards and was pressed directly into the ground of the extremely cold hell. From the gap where his arm touched the ground, a steady stream of white clay gushed out like a fountain. 6 stars. With just a thought from Storm, the power of the clay fruit spread to the entire cell, and the frozen ground instantly softened into loose clay. Awakening level. The awakening characteristic of the animal-type devil fruit is that it allows the user to gain unparalleled recovery and vitality. The awakening characteristic of the superhuman devil fruit is that it can affect things other than the user himself. The moment when Storm raised the star level of clay fruit to 6 stars. Clay fruit has awakened. Storm released the power of the clay fruit and transformed the floor of the cell into a soft clay bed. He jumped and rolled on the big clay bed, and his expression was so excited that it seemed as if he had been infected with the Nika virus. After initially adapting to the awakening ability of the clay fruit, Storm did not hesitate and took action immediately. Golden trophy, here I come. Because it is confinement rather than imprisonment. Storm was not wearing the sea stone shackles that symbolized his prisoner status. But even though he was wearing sea stone shackles, he was not worried at all. Storm can use the ability of clay fruit with the help of the power of devil ring. Sea stone can restrain people with special abilities, so what does that have to do with him, who doesn't have special abilities? Storm had already tested this himself. When I first got the sea stone baton from the Navy Equipment Department, Storm had tested the restraining effect of sea stone on him. The final conclusion is, sea stone is just a rotten rock, it's good for nothing. As early as that time, Storm had a rather vague prison plan in his mind. Now he was sent to the extremely cold hell, and the sea stone could not stop his actions. Storm stood in front of the cell door and walked steadily towards the sea stone fence in front of him. The moment his body touched the sea stone fence, it immediately softened into lumps of white clay. Sea stone prison cannot restrict Storm's actions. A cold wind blew. Storm walked out of the cell door calmly. The next action plan is of course to harvest the gold trophy in the extreme cold hell. The quality of the grand trophy is mainly linked to the strength of the opponent. In the pirate business, the bounty is undoubtedly the best symbol of strength. Just as Storm had originally speculated. Every pirate with a bounty of over 100 million can bring him a golden trophy. Starting from his solitary cell, Storm continued to plunder the big trophies of the prisoners imprisoned around him. One golden trophy after another fell into his pocket. Wait until Storm clears out his section of the cell block. The number of golden trophies in his hands has reached double digits. A total of 15 big gold trophies. This number is far from satisfactory. Storm's footsteps finally stopped in front of a dense snowy forest. But it doesn't matter. In addition to the prisoners, there are also corresponding prison cells in the extreme cold hell. Army Wolf. Before going in search of the Army Wolf, Storm was the first to call out his own big trophy, intending to continue adding points. The golden trophies disappeared like bubbles. One 5-star ability after another appeared in Storm's ability column. Armament hockey / observation hockey, 5 stars. Iron block / paper painting, shaving, finger gun, 5 stars. In the blink of an eye, Storm used up 12 golden trophies. Because the strength level of the army wolves was still uncertain, Storm deliberately left behind 3 gold trophies. He had previously upgraded the endurance attribute to 5 stars, but the other 2 physique attributes were still only 4 stars. These 3 golden trophies are prepared for the attributes of strength and speed. Everything is ready, except Army Wolf. A sharp red light flashed in Storm's eyes, and his observation hockey passed through the dense forest in front of him like the wind. Found it. Storm raised his right hand, created a tall, clay clone, and controlled it to rush into the dense forest in front of him. The owner of the dense forest soon noticed the movement, accompanied by a rustling sound. The army wolf covered in snow-white fur appeared in front of the clay clones. The army wolves are not as huge as the wild beasts in the beast hell. But the eyes of every army wolf were glowing blood red, making them look extremely difficult to deal with. Ouch! Followed by a soul-stirring wolf howl. The 7 or 8 army wolves that had surrounded it seemed to have received an order and ran towards the clay clone together. The army wolves moved so fast that they were almost catching up with the Minoan zebras. But the wolf moves fast. It's not faster than the clay clone. Under Storm's control, the clay clone punched forward fiercely. Its huge arm exploded like a cannonball, breaking into 7 pieces of clay of equal thickness and size. The tips of these clay tentacles were deliberately shaped into fists, striking the army wolves in front of them with incredible precision. Clay rain. The movement speed of the army wolves is no match for the awakened clay fruit. They rushed over like thunder. Then he fell to the ground under the violent storm of clay fists. Boom. 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 Accompanied by 8 crisp head-knocking sounds. The 8 army wolves that came to besiege them were all knocked unconscious. Gold trophy, Army Wolf, X8. It's really a golden trophy. A hint of joy flashed in Storm's eyes. But at this moment, a figure hiding in the darkness suddenly appeared. Just an orange-yellow shadow flashed in the air. The clay clone that had just displayed its mighty power had its head chopped off. Buffed. The headless clay clone pushed the golden mountain, overturned the jade pillar, and fell directly to the ground in the dense forest. Succeeded. The orange-yellow shadow stopped moving and revealed its true appearance. His hair and clothes are half orange on the left and half white on the right, and there is a huge lightning scar from his forehead to his right eye. It is worth noting that this guy's arms are not human arms, but 2 huge scissors. A senior officer of the Revolutionary Army, Lightning. Before Lightning could go forward to confirm the situation, the corpse of the clay clone suddenly made a strange sound. Baji, baji. The clay suddenly softened as if it was affected by some force. The body of the clay clone and the head that had been cut off were reunited in Lightning's shocked eyes. Hey! Clay clone stared at Lightning with his emotionless white eyes, a mocking arc rising at the corners of his mouth. It hurts. Looking at the clay clone in front of him, which was unharmed, Lightning suddenly felt something was wrong and subconsciously took a few steps back. As far as he knows, in Impel Down, there is only one person who has the ability to manipulate clay. The new chief jailer of the deep-sea prison who was just sent to the extremely cold hell this morning. Lightning stared at the clay clone and whispered the name. Vangala Storm. You know me. Storm's voice exploded in Lightning's ears like thunder. The latter instantly felt a chill down his spine, because he could almost feel the breath coming from behind. Lightning burst out at the fastest speed in his life and fled directly from the spot. Only after he ran 10 meters away did he dare to turn his head and look back at the place where he had just stood. Storm just stood there, looking over here calmly. When did this guy show up? Lightning was still in shock, his heart beating wildly like a drum. Did he just stand there and watch while I attacked? A special half-yellow and half-white shape, with huge dual-wielded scissors. Storm took a step forward, walking towards the Lightning step by step. You are a prisoner who was originally imprisoned in the extremely cold hell. A senior officer of the Revolutionary Army, Scissorman, Lightning. His identity was revealed by the enemy, and Lightning's face showed an extremely solemn expression. Without waiting for him to speak, the chief jailer continued his verbal oppression. I'm curious. Storm kept getting closer to Lightning, and asked fatal questions one after another in the calmest tone. Why, a prisoner who was already on the death list would appear in front of me alive and kicking? Why, there is not even a trace of frostbite on your body, and even the aura you exude is so healthy. Why do you know my name when I just came to Poosh Castle not long ago? Lest Storm go on to make even more horrible inferences. Lightning subconsciously raised his hands, wanting to interrupt the other person. Spinning shears. Lightning shook his hands vigorously. His arms turned into giant scissors, which flew out with his movements. 2 huge pairs of scissors began to spin at high speed in the air, as if they had turned into 2 cold discs. Woo! 2 large scissors whistled and tore through the air, carrying with them a powerful momentum that could cut gold and jade, as if they were going to cut Storm in 2 at once. Storm stood there, motionless, allowing the big scissors to attack him. Tisk tisk. The 2 large scissors hit Storm's body almost at the same time, leaving 2 deep scars on his body that were visible to the bone. Lightning could almost see the cold winter scenery of the dense forest in the distance through Storm's wound. However, what made him despair was, even though he was seriously injured, he didn't bleed a single drop. You should have realized it earlier. Storm's clay body healed instantly. Your attack has no effect on me. The moment the words fell. Shave. Storm's feet stomped heavily on the ground. The strong reverse thrust made him burst out with amazing speed and suddenly came in front of the Lightning. His right fist was raised at some point, the fist was covered with pitch black, armament hockey, and the fist punched forward like a nail. Iron block, a serious punch. At this critical moment, Lightning released the power of the scissors fruit, in time, transforming the surface of his body into the solid blade of a pair of scissors. Clang. Storm's cannon fist hit Lightning's body, and suddenly there was a crisp sound like the collision of metal. The Lightning flew backwards in response, flying dozens of meters away and crashing into several large trees before it stopped. Dust mixed with broken snow flew all over the sky. Among the smoke and dust, Lightning knelt on one knee, blood oozing from the corner of his mouth, and there was an obvious fist mark left on his body. Although the special ability of the scissors fruit helped him reduce the damage to a certain extent. However, the restraining effect of armament hockey on devil fruit ability users still exists. Storm's iron fist caused Lightning to suffer serious injuries. As expected, it's a monster that can fight back and forth with Rain Shiryu. Lightning coughed up a mouthful of blood and looked forward with a determined look. But no matter what, he must not be allowed to discover the existence of paradise. Impel Down, 5.5th floor, New Transvestite Paradise. This is the paradise created by the Shemale King Ambryo Ivankov with all his heart. As a loyal follower of Ivankov, Lightning will never allow anyone to affect the great plan of the Shemale King. Especially the jailer of Impel Down. The running dogs of the world government. Lightning once again transformed his hands into large scissors and stuck the scissors into the ground beneath his feet. As the user of the snipping fruit ability, Lightning can not only turn every part of the body into scissors. He can also cut any hard object and manipulate the cut objects like paper. Just a few moments. The Lightning cut the ground beneath our feet into pieces of frozen fragments. Under the influence of the scissors fruit, these frozen fragments are stacked together like paper. Lightning manipulated the frozen fragments, flinging them out like paper airplanes. The seemingly thin fragments of frozen soil are actually pieces of hard, cold frozen soil. Under the control of Lightning, the attack power of these frozen earth fragments is no less than that of ordinary artillery shells. Keep out. Overwhelming amounts of frozen earth fragments bombarded Storm, as if to completely submerge him. Faced with this attack, Storm did not retreat but advanced. Paper painting clay. Storm walked among the dense frozen soil fragments, his body constantly changing shape with the air fluctuations. Boom. 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 Every piece of frozen soil that falls down creates a deafening roar, shaking the earth. But when Storm passed through this death fire network, he was still intact. Even the corners of the clothes were not stained by dust. Is this the only strength of the senior officers of the Revolutionary Army? Storm opened his 5 fingers, and white clay surged out and instantly turned into several thick clay strips. The tip of each long clay strip is covered with a thin layer of armament hockey to increase its destructive power. Then, attack and defense change. Clay rain. Storm manipulated the clay bar and launched a violent storm of attacks at lightning. Every piece of clay that hits the ground can easily create a huge deep pit. The lightning dodged one and dodged two. But there is no way to avoid the third and fourth rules. Boom. Lightning's body was hit by a stick of clay, and the clay attack wrapped in armament hockey instantly made his body pause. Immediately afterwards, endless clay strips came together to surround and directly submerge the lightning. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by a series of continuous roars. A new, big trophy popped up in front of Storm. Platinum Trophy, Lightning. Trophy star rating, 5 stars. Another platinum trophy is in hand. Storm put away the trophy and recovered the clay. On the bumpy ground, Lightning, covered in wounds, was lying deep in the largest pit. If his chest had not been still rising and falling, he would have looked as if he were dead. Looking at Lightning, who was completely defeated, Storm frowned slightly. He was very happy to receive a platinum trophy. But how to deal with Lightning has become a small problem. Although Storm had long known that there was a hidden 5.5 floor in the city. But he had never thought about doing anything about the group of perverted new humans in the new Shemale paradise. The trophies offered by the Shemales are the same as the trophies offered by the prisoners. That being the case, why did Storm go to the new transvestite paradise instead of going there? First time in the extremely cold hell. Storm hadn't expected to run into someone from the new Shemale paradise so soon. And the person he met was the second-in-command of the new Ladyboy paradise. The fighting just now was a bit noisy. If the entrance to the new Ladyboy paradise is near this dense forest, the people inside should have noticed the situation. In this case, Storm thought for a moment, looked at the clay clone, who was watching the battle on the side, and suddenly an idea came to his mind. After a few seconds, a tall and burly human appeared in the dense forest of the extreme cold hell. He was extremely tall, more than 6 meters tall, with long golden hair draped behind his head like a lion's mane. But the most eye-catching thing is the huge white beard that curves upward in a crescent shape on his face. Whitebeard 3. Edward Teach is back. Storm's clay fruit ability has been awakened, coupled with the color-changing ability he obtained previously. The Whitebeard 3 he created was no longer as sloppy and funny as before. At this moment, Whitebeard 3 standing proudly in the extremely cold hell, his image is extremely close to Whitebeard when he was in his 40s. Even if the real Whitebeard appeared here. See, Whitebeard 3. He couldn't help but wonder if he really had an illegitimate child with Miss Buckingham. Storm looked at the clay clone in front of him. Do not. Now he should be called Edward Teach. Storm looked at Edward Teach and couldn't help but nodded with satisfaction. Next moment, Storm walked forward and bumped into Edward Teach. His entire body merged into Edward Teach's body like a drop of water. Move. Edward Teach. Storm hid himself in the Whitebeard 3 humanoid mecha. He was like a novice Gundam pilot, constantly familiarizing himself with the capabilities of this new body. After adapting to his new body, Storm began to try to imitate the real Whitebeard. Ganara, Ba. Gula. Gula. Galala. I am Whitebeard 3. Edward Teach wanders through the forests of frozen hell. He held the lightning in his hand as if he was holding a fragile little chicken. Just now, he used observation hockey to explore the entire forest. Especially places where lightning occurs, which are the key search areas. After a careful search, Edward Teach discovered a secret entrance hidden deep in the forest. With his observation hockey, he could clearly hear the noisy sounds coming from inside. If there is no accident, that secret entrance is the entrance to the new Shemale paradise on the 5.5th floor of Advanced City. Edward Teach. Or Storm, who is hidden in the Edward Teach humanoid mecha. The destination of his trip is the new transvestite paradise behind the mysterious entrance. After a few minutes of walking, Edward Teach successfully arrived near the mysterious entrance. Here, even if he didn't use observation hockey, he could clearly hear the sounds coming from inside. Edward Teach did not hesitate any longer and stepped directly in. At the beginning it was extremely narrow, and then he became enlightened. After taking dozens of steps, he suddenly became enlightened. Edward Teach appeared inside a huge empty cave. Although the height of this cave is not as high as the extremely cold hell outside, it is still several dozen meters high. It is completely sufficient to accommodate the normal activities of the giants. The interior of the cave seems to have been specially built, like a large theater with a simple environment. When Edward Teach entered the cave, the people inside were enjoying themselves partying. A man with an afro and strange body proportions is performing passionately on the stage of the Grand Theater. There is everything here. Wine. Food. Weapons. More importantly, there is freedom here. This is the secret garden of Impel Down, the new Shemael Lo. As soon as the guy with the afro turned around, he saw the extremely tall figure in the crowd. His eyes bulged out in surprise, his mouth opened as wide as possible, and his tongue couldn't help but curl up and deform. Whitebeard. The horrified reaction of the protagonist of the stage play also caused a chain reaction from other people in the new Shemael paradise. The lighting is turned on. Everyone in the audience saw the strange guest who suddenly appeared. Whitebeard. Edward Newgate. The strongest man in the world. There was a panic in the new Ladyboy paradise. What a lively place, goolalala. Edward Teach gave a deep laugh and threw the wounded man in the direction of the stage. These are your subordinates, Shemael King. Ambryo Ivankov subconsciously raised his hands and took over the seriously injured and unconscious figure. Lightning. What's going on? It's a bit complicated to explain the specifics. Edward Teach rubbed his stomach and looked at the party nearby. Is there anything to eat here? Yes. Of course. Please wait a moment. Ivankov first gave Lightning a shot of healing hormone. Then he immediately rushed to Edward Teach's side and carefully led him to sit down. Hurry up and bring the food over. The finest ingredients. The finest wine. Bring it all over. It doesn't take a moment. There was a mountain of food in front of Edward Teach. I'm not welcome. Hiding inside, Storm quietly added points to his many abilities. After previous battles and accumulation, Storm currently owns 11 gold trophies and 3 platinum trophies. Before entering the new Ladyboy paradise, Storm first spent several big trophies to improve several of his abilities. Moon Step / Mist Kick, Swordsmanship, Life Return, 5 stars. As for now, with plenty of food in front of him, Storm's choice is of course Physique add points. As the last 3 golden trophies were consumed, Storm's strength and speed attributes immediately skyrocketed. Without hesitation, he invested the remaining 3 platinum trophies into the endurance and speed attributes respectively. Strength, 5 stars. Speed, 5.5 stars. Endurance, 6 stars. The moment when the physique points are added, an unprecedented feeling of hunger surged into Storm's heart. He grabbed a piece of Sea King meat and stuffed it into his mouth. The mountain of food in front of him quickly shrank and disappeared. In an empty cave, only the sound of monster eating continued. The ladyboys in the new Ladyboy paradise watched the scene of people eating voraciously in front of them. No one dared to make a sound at this time. Even Ivankov, the king of transvestites, did not dare to disturb Whitebeard's meal at this time. The food in front of Whitebeard was getting less and less. Ivankov quickly waved to the chef in the new transvestite paradise, signaling him to serve the food quickly. Time passes bit by bit. The new humans in the new transvestite paradise kept exchanging glances of amazement. Whitebeard has been eating for half an hour. Too strong. His stomach is simply a bottomless pit. All the food stored in the new transvestite paradise for a week was eaten by him. While Whitebeard was eating, Ivankov was also observing him the whole time. After careful observation, he found that the Whitebeard in front of him was not the same as the Whitebeard he knew. The Revolutionary Army has extremely well-informed information channels. Even though Ivankov had been imprisoned in Impel Down, but as the commander of the Grand Line Army of the Revolutionary Army, Ivankov still possesses a large amount of secret intelligence that is unknown to the public. For example, he knew a long time ago that Whitebeard was seriously ill and no longer as strong as he was in his heyday. However, this Whitebeard, who appeared in the new transvestite paradise at this time, was incredibly healthy. There is one more thing. Ivankov had met Whitebeard in his youth more than 30 years ago. The two of them experienced the West Sea God Valley incident together. This Whitebeard doesn't look like Whitebeard at all. Ivankov felt resentful in his heart. This Whitebeard is a Whitebeard boy. If Ivankov were to describe it. The Whitebeard who was eating all the time looked like he was carved from the same mold as the young Whitebeard. Wait a minute. No way. An incredibly surprising idea suddenly emerged in Ivankov's mind. This Whitebeard, could he be Whitebeard's son? At this time, Storm, who had cleared out all the food reserves in the new transvestite paradise, was finally full and satisfied. Ivankov hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward cautiously. Mr. Whitebeard. The She-Male King bent down and forced a flattering smile on his rough face. What are your orders? No need to be so reserved, She-Male King. I've heard of your name. Edward Teach stood up, looked down at Ivankov, and extended his right hand to the latter. Be my friend, Embryo Ivankov. I'm Edward Teach. Whitebeard 3. Whitebeard, the third. The She-Male King had heard rumors about Whitebeard 2. It is said that Whitebeard 2 possesses the same powerful strength as Whitebeard in his youth. But where did this Whitebeard 3 come from? But then again, this Whitebeard 3 is indeed more like the real Whitebeard Edward Newgate. It would be nice to be your friend. Ivankov stretched out his right hand tremblingly and gently touched Edward Teach's fingers. It's my honor. Goo la la la. Edward Teach gave a hearty laugh. Since we are all friends, I will just speak out. Ivankov, I need your strength. After confirming that the other party was not the real Whitebeard, but the so-called Whitebeard 3. Ivankov's courage gradually grew. Edward. Call me Tiki. Okay, Tiki. Ivankov immediately changed his tone. What do you want from me? More food. As long as Edward Teach's demands weren't so outrageous. Ivankov and others both intended to satisfy each other. After all, judging from the situation when the other party appeared just now, Edward Teach is Lightning's savior. No. Not food. Edward Teach clenched his right fist and swung it heavily. Ivankov, I knew it the moment I saw you. You are the same type of person as me. You are willing to abandon your previous identity and sneak into Impel Down just to build this new She-Male paradise, right? Ivankov blinked. Although what Edward Teach said sounded a bit problematic. But from the other person's perspective, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. Before being arrested and imprisoned, Ivankov was the queen of the Kamabaka kingdom. The reason why he entered Impel Down and lay dormant in the new She-Male paradise. The purpose is to absorb the prisoners in the city and expand the ranks of the Revolutionary Army. Just wait until the day when the Revolutionary Army from outside starts to take action. Ivankov will lead the members of the new She-Male paradise back to the outside world again. From this angle, there was nothing wrong with Edward Teach's understanding. Yes, maybe, possibly, that's it. Ivankov responded randomly and then asked again. What about you, Tiki? I don't care about these insignificant minions. Edward Teach opened his arms, embraced the void, and fully displayed his ambition. My goal is the 6th level of Infinite Hell. I will select the most elite and powerful subordinates from among the most evil and terrible criminals in the world. I'm going to form the most terrifying pirate group in history. I want to defeat Whitebeard and become the strongest pirate in the world. The remnants of the old era have reached the time to exit the stage of history. My new era has no ships to carry them. The moment Edward Teach finished speaking, a whirlwind seemed to have arisen out of nowhere in the new Ladyboy paradise. Faint dark red arcs of electricity shuttled through the void, and an invisible deterrent force enveloped the entire scene. Even the few transsexuals standing at the edge of the crowd inexplicably felt a heavy sense of oppression at this moment. Heroic hockey. Ivankov, who was closest to the place, was the first to feel the brunt of the threat. Even though the Demon King had experienced many ups and downs, a few drops of cold sweat involuntarily seeped out of his forehead. Such a terrible ambition. Such a lofty dream. Ivankov was speechless and looked at Edward Teach with an expression of surprise and shock. I'm afraid only Whitebeard's son can have it. From this moment on, Ivankov no longer had any doubts about Edward Teach's identity. He is definitely Whitebeard III for sure. Emotionally, Ivankov greatly appreciated the plan Edward Teach had just proposed. Carefully select the most powerful subordinates in the most terrifying infinite hell. This kind of plan that ordinary people wouldn't even dare to think about, but Teach proposed it so openly. But rationally speaking, Ivankov was not optimistic about Edward Teach's future. Infinite hell, what is that place? The criminals imprisoned there are almost all monsters who were deliberately erased from history by the world government because they were too vicious. Every prisoner in the infinite hell can be regarded as a legendary figure outside. Can Edward Teach really recruit subordinates from the infinite hell? Ivankov did not know the answer to this question. But at this time, he did not express any negative comments on Tiki's words, but just asked calmly. Teach, what exactly do you need me to do? If Edward Teach wanted Ivankov to help with this infinite hell recruitment plan. For example, he was responsible for the aftermath and helped Edward Teach and his possible future subordinates escape from Impel Down secretly. Then Ivankov could grit his teeth and agree to it. Trivia. The new Shemale Paradise connects all the secret passages of all sizes in Impel Down. From the first level of the Red Lotus Hell to the 5th level of the Extreme Cold Hell. On the first 5 floors of the Advancement City, each floor has a special secret passage leading to the new Transvestite Paradise. Even the jailers of Impel Down were unaware of the existence of these mysterious secret passages. Ivankov is fully capable of helping a group move freely through the first 5 levels of Impel Down without being noticed. Edward Teach seemed a little dazed. But after hearing the words of the Demon King, he quickly focused his attention. Didn't I just say that? My goal is infinite hell. Ivankov, come with me to the infinite hell. Edward Teach once again extended a hand of friendship to the Shemale King. We are friends. If we can't go through fire and water together, what kind of friends are we? Monster King, you will go to hell with me, right? Ivankov himself had no idea whether he would go to hell after his death. But Edward Teach made the invitation at this time. To Ivankov it sounded like a call from hell. In an instant, Ivankov sweated profusely. He originally wanted to repay Edward Teach for saving Lightning's life. But how did this situation develop into? He was going to give his life to Edward Teach. Me, you, friend, that, ahahaha. Ivankov wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, laughed, and asked vaguely. Teach, if you really enter the infinite hell, how are you going to recruit those vicious criminals? What would I do? Galala. Edward Teach laughed loudly, and his loud laughter echoed in the cave. I will unchain all the prisoners in the infinite hell. I will launch an unprecedented beast fight in the infinite hell. Only those who survive the endless fighting are qualified to be my subordinates. The future on a normal timeline. There was indeed a Teachy who did this. But that man's name is Blackbeard Teach. And what Whitebeard Teach said at this time. Select subordinates from the infinite hell. It's a lie. Edward Teach, Storm, to be exact. Everything that Storm had said to Ivankov before was true. He wants to enter infinite hell. He wants to form the most terrifying pirate group in history. He wants to defeat Whitebeard, defeat all competitors, and become the strongest pirate in the world. He also wants to select the most elite and powerful subordinates from among the most evil and terrible criminals in the world. But who says the most evil and powerful criminals in the world only exist in infinite hell? Look at this Edward Teach, isn't he also lawless and arrogant? To be fair, Storm is not Blackbeard. He had no interest in recruiting the garbage from infinite hell. He is not Nika, the sun god. For his own selfish reasons, he facilitated the escape of a large number of criminals from prison in Impel Down. Storm's goal from beginning to end was only one. The big trophy for those legendary warriors in the infinite hell. At the beginning, Storm took the initiative to apply to come to Impel Down. They come here just for the big trophies carried by the countless prisoners imprisoned here. He didn't come to Impel Down to be a jailer just to work for the world government for the rest of his life. Now, after continuously adding points to the big trophy, Storm's overall strength has reached 5 stars. His clay fruit has even reached the awakening level. Even the 4-star gold trophy, it has lost its appeal to Storm now. In other words, Impel Down is no longer a leveling holy land. Under these circumstances, of course, Storm had to start thinking about leaving Impel Down. Advance into the city, 7 levels of hell. Storm fought his way through the Red Lotus Hell on the 1st floor and arrived at the new Shemale Paradise on the 5.5th floor. In the end, only the prisoners in the Infinite Hell had not been visited by him. Storm had long been thinking about going to the Infinite Hell to make a big move and finally reap a big trophy. Then they left Impel Down and headed for the freer sea. A real man lives between heaven and earth. How can he be depressed and inferior to others for long? Today, he encountered lightning by chance, which accidentally involved Ivankov behind him, as well as the hidden map, New Shemale Paradise. Storm naturally came up with the idea of letting this group of powerful transvestites help him with his plan. Now it all depends on Ivankov's response. Even the Shemale King had already realized the extraordinary nature of Edward Teach. But after he heard the other party's plan, he couldn't help but be shocked. Let all the prisoners in the Infinite Hell kill each other, and select the ultimate criminal who survives. As soon as you hear about this kind of thing, you know it was done by Teach. However, Teach, Infinite Hell is not extremely cold hell. Ivankov exhorted earnestly. The Infinite Hell is guarded by a very strong force, and there are surveillance den mushy everywhere. Without an order from Director Magellan, even the jailers cannot enter and exit the Infinite Hell at will. And if there is even the slightest disturbance in the Infinite Hell, the monitoring room will receive the news immediately. By then, the entire Impel Down city's forces will be quickly mobilized. You will face the real terrifying force from hell. Especially the director of Impel Down, Magellan. Ivankov was no inexperienced newcomer to the sea. As the commander of the Grand Line Army of the Revolutionary Army, Ivankov knew very well what kind of terrifying monsters those strong men standing at the top of the pyramid of power in the sea were. Whitebeard, Red Hair, Beasts, Big Mom. These names, even if just spoken out, would scare ordinary people. On the ocean, not many people know Magellan. But Ivankov, who had lived in Impel Down for some time, knew very well how powerful that poison man was. Without any exaggeration. In Impel Down, the strength that Magellan can display is not inferior to the strongest combat power of the world government. Ivankov didn't want to face such a terrible enemy. Goo la la la. Edward Teach smiled, suddenly stood up and walked towards the exit of the New Shemale Paradise. Wait a moment, please allow me to introduce you to a new friend. No demon dared to stop Whitebeard 3's actions. Even Ivankov took no action. He just sat quietly in the chair and watched Edward Teach turn and leave. In less than a moment, Edward Teach returns to the New Shemale Paradise. And next to his tall and burly figure, there appeared a tall figure. Vangela Storm. Ivankov was instantly shocked. He jumped off the chair and subconsciously took a defensive posture. Why are you here? The New Shemale Paradise has always been independent of the surveillance system of the Impel Down city. No prison staff knew of the existence of the 5 points floor. At this moment, Ivankov suddenly saw Vangela Storm. This terrifying head jailer, who had just entered prison, was able to beat Shilua violently. How could the Demon King not be horrified? Teach. Why are you just watching? Calm down, Ivankov. Edward Teach said in a muffled voice. Storm is my partner. I don't know if it's an illusion. Ivankov felt that Teach in front of him didn't seem as aggressive and unruly as before. But he still heard what Tiki said clearly. Vangela Storm, you are actually Teach's partner. No. You are wrong, Shemale King. Storm's smile was wild and unrestrained. I am not a partner of Whitebeard 3. I'm the captain of Whitebeard 3. Captain Whitebeard. When Ivankov heard this, his jaw almost hit the ground. A man like Edward Teach is actually a member of someone else's crew. Yes. Even the now famous, strongest man in the world, was once a member of a certain man's crew. At this moment, a very vague shadow suddenly flashed through Ivankov's mind. That was before the pirate king Gold Roger, the overlord of the sea who is closest to the position of pirate king, the captain of the Rocks pirates. Lox D. Gibek, Edward Newgate the Whitebeard, Shiki the Golden Lion, Charlotte Lean the Big Mom, Kaido the Beast. These world-famous legendary pirates were once members of the Rocks pirates. This is not to mention Captain John, Silver Axe, Wang Ji, Buckingham Stussy, the Nine-Snake Queen, the previous generation, and others. On the ship of the Rocks pirates. Even Wang Ji, who was unknown back then. Now it is also the overlord of the New World who has occupied Honeycomb Island for many years. I'm really a little dizzy. Ivankov lowered his head and held his forehead to hide his overly exposed emotions. To compare a young man to Lox D. Gibek back then. When Ivankov raised his head again, he looked at Whitebeard 3. Teach, is what he said true? Yes. Whitebeard 3 nodded heavily. Storm is not only my partner, he is also my captain. The scene before my eyes was too bizarre. Even the thick-skinned Ivankov found it hard to accept for a moment. But Whitebeard 3 personally nodded in agreement and would not allow the Demon King to question it. Vongala Storm, who are you? Finally, Ivankov could only look at Storm, who kept asking him questions one after another. Why did you come to Impel Down? What is your purpose? Is it for the infinite hell? You ask too many questions, Ivankov. Storm interrupted the Demon King directly. I have no obligation to explain it to you. Ivankov couldn't help rubbing his face, trying to ease his excitement. And at this time, on the other side, Lightning, who was injected with healing hormones, slowly woke up from his coma. My queen. Lightning's call immediately caught the attention of the She-Male King. Ivankov immediately flashed to his subordinate's side and gently lifted his arm. Watch out for Vongala Storm. Lightning held on to his wits and warned the queen. He has come to the extremely cold hell. After saying this, Lightning fainted again. The atmosphere in the new Ladyboy Paradise suddenly became a little solemn. Ivankov had just let down his guard, but now he had to be vigilant again. Vongala Storm, was it you who caused the lightning to become like this? It's me. Storm unexpectedly gave an affirmative answer. The sadness and anger on Ivankov's face flashed away. I just heard Storm continue. You should be thankful for this, She-Male King. What are you thankful for? Ivankov replied coldly. Are you glad that Lightning didn't get killed by you? Indeed. Storm responded sharply. At least I didn't kill that demon just now, but let Tiki send him to you. Ivankov's expression froze. Even though he was dissatisfied and angry about the fact that Vongala Storm seriously injured Lightning. But at this moment he had to admit that what the other party said did make some sense. As the chief jailer of Impel Down, Vongala Storm also has the power to execute prisoners. Even if Vongala Storm did kill Lightning, that was his duty. Even if we take a step back, Vongala Storm severely injured Lightning. What if he left Lightning alone in the forest of the extremely cold hell? The unconscious Lightning would definitely be eaten up by the crazy army wolves. If that's the case, Ivankov will also lose this precious subordinate. At this moment, Ivankov felt a little relieved. Fortunately, the enemy Lightning encountered was Storm instead of Rain Shiryu. Otherwise, Lightning will surely die. Wait until you have completely sorted out your thoughts. Ivankov's anger also disappeared almost completely. I was injured by Lightning, but it's just an injury. As long as I'm alive, that's enough. As for how Vongala Storm escaped from the prison of the extremely cold hell and encountered Lightning, Ivankov had no intention of exploring this point. After all, no matter what, Vongala Storm's identity is chief jailer rather than prisoner. The punishment he received was merely confinement rather than imprisonment. The other party probably has 10,000 ways to leave the cell. Ivankov stopped dwelling on this little matter. The solemn atmosphere in the new Ladyboy Paradise gradually eased. Vongala Storm. Ivankov brought up the old matter again. Are you and Teach really planning to go to the infinite hell to recruit subordinates? Our target is indeed the prisoners in the infinite hell. Storm told the truth. But I didn't intend to come to you at first. New Shemale Paradise. Ha! Even though the other party's attitude was very unpleasant, Ivankov wished the other party would be like this. Because he didn't want to get involved in the infinite hell recruitment plan at all. Cherish life and stay away from crazy people. In that case, please leave now. Ivankov couldn't wait to order them to leave. I wish you two success in your operations in advance. The Demon King. Storm tilted his head and looked at Ivankov sideways. When did you develop the illusion that you could stay out of this? Ivankov was startled for a moment. What? Storm waved his hand, and Whitebeard 3 obediently stepped aside. Then he took a step and slowly walked towards Ivankov. The New Shemale Paradise, a lawless area located in the blind spot of the Impel Down city. Storm walked forward step by step, and the ground where his feet stepped on kept spewing out clay like a fountain. The moment I appeared here, your fate was already decided. The Demon King. You want to go to the infinite hell with me? Or do you want me to send you to the infinite hell? The atmosphere, which had just relaxed, suddenly became tense. Ivankov's eyes widened and his eyes were bloodshot. But in the next moment, he blinked his eyelids violently. A powerful shock wave started from his eyelids and rushed towards Storm, who was approaching like a storm. Death wink. Boom. The shock wave created by Ivankov's death blink exploded the moment it touched Storm's body. A deafening roar was heard in the New Shemale Paradise. Storm, who was hit by Ivankov's death blink blast wave, had his body torn into pieces. But what flowed out of Storm's wounds was not blood, but white clay. At the same time, the ground beneath Storm's feet was also assimilated by the power of the clay fruit and turned into an enormous piece of clay. Liquid clay. Storm manipulated the clay ground beneath his feet, changing it into undulating shapes like waves. One huge hand after another grew out of the clay ground and attacked all the transvestites in the New Transvestite Paradise. Ah! The ground has turned to clay. I can hardly stand. So many hands. There's no way to dodge them. The members of the New Shemale Paradise were originally prisoners recruited by Ivankov from the first 5 levels, and their strengths varied. Faced with the large-scale attack of flowing clay, none of these demons can dodge it. Just a few breaths. Most of the members in the New Shemale Paradise were controlled by Storm using the clay fruit. Even Lightning, who fell into a coma again, was no exception. Only Ivankov was still dodging the attack of flowing clay. As a man of extensive experience, he immediately saw the essence of this large-scale attack technique. Vangala Storm's clay fruit has awakened. The Shemale King's scalp suddenly went numb. Hey hey hey! Ivankov nimbly dodged the clay's attack while shouting loudly. Can I admit defeat? Stop it now. If you keep attacking, the entire New Shemale Paradise will be destroyed by you. Admit defeat. Storm looked at the motionless, big trophy, and smiled coldly. Since you are worried about the destruction of the New Shemale Paradise, then let's go out and fight. It just so happens that I am very interested in your abilities. Storm has recently been thinking about how to make the clay fruit more artistic. After all, it is well known that art is a blast. Human muscles and eyelids can actually produce explosive waves of that magnitude. Storm was really interested in Ivankov's death wink. Huh? What did you say? Ivankov was so surprised by Storm's words that he even forgot to dodge Clay's attack. You want to become a new human, too? I can help you evolve. New humanity. That is, Shemale. After hearing Ivankov's words, Storm's face instantly turned dark. He controlled the white clay to transform into an enormous palm and slapped Ivankov hard. Snapped. Storm swatted Ivankov into the underground of the New Transvestite Paradise like swatting a fly. Ah. I'm going to be sent to infinite hell, no way. Ivankov's voice shouted from the clay. Hell wink. Boom. The violent shock wave hit the white clay, and the earth made of clay suddenly exploded. With clay fragments flying all over the sky. Ivankov jumped high into the air, and his appearance changed into that of a woman at some point. The queen hooked her finger at Storm. "Vangela, let's go out and play together." In the extremely cold hell, the cold wind is raging. Ivankov transformed into a female form and jumped out of the secret cave of the new she-male paradise. But before she could land smoothly on the ground in the dense forest outside. In an open space somewhere in the dense forest, the white snow covering the ground suddenly softened at this moment. The crystal clear and delicate snowflakes turned into heavy and soft clay. Slamla. The white clay shot up into the sky like a fountain. Storm's figure then appeared in front of Ivankov. "That's it." Ivankov looked towards where Storm was and blinked suddenly. Death winks. Taking advantage of the moment when Storm just showed up, Ivankov released a powerful blast of wind that rushed towards his location at an extremely fast speed. After all, the clay fruit is only of the superhuman type, not the natural type. Even if Vangela Storm developed the clay fruit to the awakening level, it's impossible for him to keep himself in the clay state all the time, right? Under Ivankov's earnest gaze, the strong blast wind created by Death Blink hit Storm's body with incredible precision. Boom. The sound of the explosion was deafening. Storm's body, which had just taken shape, exploded at this moment and was directly blown into pieces all over the sky. Small pieces of white clay mixed in the shock wave and flew all over the ground nearby. Succeeded. Ivankov's expression showed surprise and joy. But in the next moment, the ground where Storm's fragments fell changed in nature due to the interference of an invisible force. Just a few breaths of time. The entire forest was transformed and assimilated into clay by the clay fruit. The trees that had stood in the forest for who knows how many years were turned into clay at this moment. Storm, who was safe and sound, reappeared from the same place. He looked up at the Demon King in midair, controlling the clay forest and launching an impenetrable attack into the sky. Sea of clay trees. Each of the clay-turned trees is more than 10 meters long, and the main branches are as thick as an ordinary person's embrace. Countless clay trees gathered together to form a solid white net. The strong visual pressure makes people feel a little breathless. Ivankov looked at the sea of clay trees approaching below and took a deep breath. The next moment, her body suddenly curled up, her hands tightly hugged her calves, and her whole body almost shrunk into a ball. Rotate, beauty. Ivankov, curled up into a ball, spun rapidly in the air like a giant gyroscope. Snap. Snap. One after another, large clay trees hit the surface of Ivankov's body. They are like long white whips whipping the spinning top. The huge force not only failed to slow down the rotation speed of the Ivankov gyroscope, but instead helped it to speed up. Ivankov's rotation speed became faster and faster, causing the air around his body to rotate along with it. In the end, the air gathered around his body and even formed a faint spherical protective shield. Wait until the attack time of Sea of Clay Trees is over. Ivankov was still spinning there. Storm below couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He raised his right hand and put his 5 fingers together. The clay tree that had just rushed into the sky began to twist according to his will. One clay tree after another is connected to each other, like threads on a spider web. In the blink of an eye, these big clay trees together form a real dragnet. Spider's nest. Storm manipulated the clay spider web, covering the spinning Ivankov like a net bag. The white clay continued to gather and shrink inward, continuously compressing Ivankov's space for movement. By the time Ivankov stopped spinning, the spider's nest had already reached around his body. Up, down, left, right. Ivankov endured the dizziness in his head and looked around, trying to find a way to escape. But to her disappointment, all she could see was clay. Endless clay filled every corner of the space without leaving even the slightest gap. Even a strongman like Ivankov couldn't help feeling a little suffocated at this moment. Embryo male hormone. Ivankov first gave himself an injection. The slender and graceful female body just now suddenly turned into a muscular male body. Next moment, Ivankov raised his hands and spread his palms flat, forming a knife-like shape. New She-Male Fist 44, Beauty Secret. His eyes suddenly focused, and he waved his arms wildly, launching a super high-speed attack at the nearest clay. Dream Strike Punch. Puff. 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 Ivankov's knife kept hitting the clay in front of him, making a series of dull sounds. The texture of the clay itself was relatively soft. Storm did not wrap any armament hockey around the spider's nest. Therefore, every strike of Ivankov's hand could leave a huge hole on the spider's nest. Time keeps passing. Ivankov used his hand speed, which had been single for more than 40 years, to blast a way out in the clay. When the cold wind from the extreme cold hell blew on Ivankov's face, only then did he realize that he had escaped from the suffocating clay spider web. Ha, ha. The series of counterattacks just now consumed a lot of Ivankov's physical strength, and he couldn't help but gasp a few times. But before Ivankov could finish his rest, a shadow projected from the sky completely covered him. Ivankov raised his head with some difficulty, and the scene that came into his eyes instantly made his mouth dry. Although I know that after the devil fruit awakens, it can give the ability user an extremely powerful influence on the environment. Cold sweat broke out on Ivankov's forehead. But anyway, isn't this dragon a bit too unfair? I saw it on the land of the extremely cold hell. An extremely huge white dragon was there, swinging its tail lazily. Its fine silver-gray dragon scales exude a terrifying chill in the faint light scattered by the snow. Ivankov knew that Vongala Storm had a little white dragon. He had seen the dragon through surveillance before. But if the Demon King remembers correctly, the little white dragon that Storm had before was only the size of an ordinary cat and could even lie on a human's shoulder. But who could tell Ivankov? Where on earth did that huge beast that was lying on the ground and was at least several hundred meters long come from? Just as Ivankov was stunned, the white dragon raised one of its claws and gently pressed it on the ground around it. The clay earth seemed unable to withstand the suppression of this powerful force and exploded with a boom. Endless clay rushed up into the sky, instantly building a towering wall of size in the extremely cold hell. Ivankov looked at the seemingly endless clay wall in front of him, and his eyes suddenly became bloodshot. He hurriedly put his hands into the big face and released the power of the hormone fruit. Embryo facial growth hormone. Embryo hyperhormone. A short moment. Ivankov released two different forms of special hormones. His giant face, which was already larger than that of an ordinary person, became several times larger under the effect of facial growth hormone. As the excitement hormone continued to be injected, Ivankov's giant cheeks instantly turned red. Facial afterimage. Ivankov moved at high speed, and his large, bloodshot and red face left one blurry after another in the same place. And all these actions are preparations for the next move. Galaxy wink. Ivankov blinked rapidly, and every time he moved to a new position, he blinked frantically. One after another, the facial afterimages released an extremely powerful explosion wave. These explosion waves mixed together and bombarded the wall of size that was approaching. Rumble. The sound of continuous explosions resounded through the sky. Ivankov's galactic blink left deep holes one after another on the clay wall. Each of these pits has a diameter of nearly 10 meters. But for this towering wall, the damage caused by Ivankov was really insignificant. With Storm's unlimited blessing, the damage caused by Ivankov could not even keep up with the self-repair of the clay wall. In the desperate eyes of the She-Male King, the huge clay wall came crashing down like a tsunami. This clay wave just created a wave. Ivankov was knocked down and fell heavily to the ground of the extreme cold hell. Clay as huge as a mountain immediately pressed down on the body of the Demon King, completely submerging him in darkness. The She-Male King, Embryo Ivankov, will never rise again. After all the fighting has stopped. A brand new trophy that seemed to be made of crystal clear diamonds popped up before Storm's eyes. Diamond Trophy, Embryo Ivankov. Trophy star rating, 6 stars. 6 stars, Diamond Trophy. The legendary Man of Miracles, the commander of the Revolutionary Army's Grand Line Army, actually only has a 6-star rating. Storm was a little surprised, but felt that the evaluation was reasonable. If you think about it carefully, Ivankov's fighting ability is not very strong. In the battle just now, this person didn't even show any power of heroic. The Diamond Trophy is not bad at all. Storm removed the effect of the clay fruit and restored the Arctic hell to its original state. The power of awakening has been digested. Through a battle with the demon King Ivankov, Storm has completely mastered the power of the clay fruit after awakening. After awakening, the clay fruit can forcibly assimilate the surrounding environment. Combined with the Devil's Ring, it can be said to be an endless, natural energy source. Now all we need to do is give Storm enough time to prepare in advance. He can completely assimilate an entire island into a clay island. Round it up. Now Storm has the island-destroying level of combat power. It would be best if we could develop a few more awakening skills that could deal damage to a single target, a group of targets, or a range of targets. The reference for the development of awakening skills is those who have developed the superhuman fruit to the awakening level. Doflamingo, Katakuri, Tesoro, and Douglas Barrett. Storm collected his scattered thoughts and turned to look at the 6-star trophy he had just won. Diamond Trophy. After confirming the news that 6 stars means awakening, Storm had a new understanding of the strength of 6 stars. According to his past experience, the 4-star, Golden Trophy, has a corresponding bounty of approximately 100 million Baileys. In layman's terms, 4-star level, roughly corresponding to the supernova in the pirate camp. Then the 6-star level probably corresponds to the 7 warlords of the sea. If this level difference is correct, 8 stars is the level of an admiral or 4 emperor. Storm gently rubbed the Devil Ring on his finger a few times. It seems that the power of the Devil's Ring is even higher than I expected. 9-star rating, probably already the level of an ancient weapon, right? As expected, it is the crystallization of the wisdom of the super ancient kingdom. On the premise of having the Devil Ring, try to improve the development level of the Devil Fruit as much as possible. This choice is absolutely beneficial with no harm. Storm looked at the dazzling Diamond Trophy in the void. Change to the past. He would definitely throw this Diamond Trophy into the clay fruit without hesitation. But now, Storm quietly changed his mind. Big Trophy possessed the powerful ability to make a wish. The greatest support that Storm possesses is the Devil's Ring. It is obtained by making a wish for the Big Trophy. A Devil Ring is so powerful. Then the 2 Devil Rings must take off. Storm has 10 fingers on both hands. He wanted not 1, not 2, not 3 Devil's Rings. To be fair, as a special superhuman, the strength of the clay fruit is acceptable, but it is definitely not top-notch. Let's not talk about the Nika fruit of the superhuman abnormal evolution fantasy beast. The Sway Sway fruit that can transform into Nika, the surgery fruit that can perform immortal surgery. The Physsy fruit that can manipulate concepts at will, and the childlike fruit that can be called the effect of the law of cause and effect. Compared to these superhuman devil fruits, clay fruit is too weak. In Storm's opinion, there are roughly 2 ways to increase the strength of the clay fruit. The first one is to honestly develop the ability of the clay fruit and develop it all the way to the 9 stars. Second, hunt for other powerful devil fruits and mix them with the clay fruit to increase its strength. For example, the 2 explosion fruits can make the clay fruit more artistic. Whether it is MR.5's explosion fruit from Baroque Studio, it's the explosion fruit of Gladius from the Don Quixote family. Both can make Storm's clay fruit evolve into animal type human fruit mythical beast Daedara form. Even if these 2 explosive fruits are excluded, there are also other devil fruits that can help increase the strength of the clay fruit. But no matter which devil fruit it is, Storm wants their power. Want to become a multiple devil fruit ability user. We all need more help from Devil Rings. Go round and round. Or the Devil's Ring. The only problem now is, for the 6-star Diamond Trophy, can I wish for the Devil's Ring? Even if it's a weakened 6-star version of the Devil's Ring, the wish-making ability of Big Trophy is not omnipotent. For example, when Storm defeated the user of the chameleon fruit, he used the opponent's Big Trophy to make a wish. At that time, he also fantasized about using the Silver Trophy to make a wish for the Devil's Ring. But in the end, he only gained a 3-star color change ability. The strength of the Diamond Trophy is much higher than that of the Silver Trophy. But can you really make a wish to get the Devil's Ring by holding the Diamond Trophy? Storm didn't know. He only has one Diamond Trophy in his hand, and the risk of trial and error is too high. In case the wish fails. It would be fine if I didn't get the Devil's Ring. If I accidentally acquired some new she-male boxing skills or free gender conversion abilities. That's pure waste. Storm pondered for a long time, and finally chose to put away the Diamond Trophy. It would be nice to have a second 6-star trophy. Storm made the decision not to use this unique Diamond Trophy for the time being. If it is just about adding points, a Diamond Trophy cannot bring about a qualitative improvement. But if the wish is successful, the 2 Devil Rings will definitely help Storm's strength to undergo a qualitative change. There are 6-star strongmen in Impel Down, including Ivankov in the new she-male paradise, and there are also some in the Infinite Hell. The remaining 1. Rain Shiryu. An idea flashed through Storm's mind, and then he buried it deep in his heart. He summoned his big trophy again and checked the ability column. Before, Storm disguised himself as Edward Teach and announced his dream to Ivankov and others. He had clearly sensed a certain explosion of momentum happening to him. Could it be heroic hockey? Storm checked his own hockey attribute, but still only saw the 5-star armament hockey and observation hockey. Behind Conqueror's hockey, the words "not awakened" are still displayed. Could it be that the previous burst of momentum was just my illusion? Storm's brows furrowed slightly. Impossible. That feeling can't be an illusion. Storm closed his eyes, trying to feel the burst of momentum again, but unfortunately he felt nothing. Or, the awakening of Conqueror's hockey requires more accumulation and a more special timing. Storm struggled for a while, but ultimately found no clue. A little bit irritating. Storm looked at the extremely cold hell that had returned to its original state. He suddenly stretched out his right hand, assimilated the earth into clay again, and controlled the clay to pull out the Demon King buried underground. He was hit head-on and buried directly in the dark underground. Even a miracle man like Ivankov looked very ugly now. But Storm couldn't care less. He manipulated the clay, wrapped it around Ivankov's right foot, and shook it for a while as if he was holding some small animal. Ivankov, who had fainted, was forced to turn on by this inhumane shaking behavior. He opened his somewhat unfocused eyes, but didn't react for a moment. Who am I? Where am I? My head is dizzy. Just then, Storm's voice came from below. She-male King, are you ready? Ivankov looked over when he heard the sound and saw Storm, who looked unhappy, standing on the ground below. Vongala Storm. Why are you standing upside down in the sky? As soon as he said this, Ivankov finally came to his senses. Not Vongala Storm standing upside down in the sky. But it was he, Embryo Ivankov, who was hanged. Hey! Wait a minute. Ivankov clasped his hands together and begged for mercy. I'm already seriously injured and can't fight anymore. Is it? Storm glanced at the she-male king indifferently. Aren't you still energetic now? Clay rain. Long strips of clay shot up into the sky one after another. This completely blocked Ivankov's words before they could be said. Battle line. Platinum Trophy, Ivankov. Trophy star rating, 5 stars. Well, after defeating him once, the quality has dropped, but a platinum trophy is not bad. Storm manipulated the clay arm, grabbed Ivankov who had fallen unconscious again, and returned to the new she-male paradise. When he reached the 5.5th floor, none of the demons who had just been controlled by the giant clay hand managed to escape. Let's ignore Whitebeard 3 who has been standing in the corner. These transvestites really have no courage at all. Storm glanced at the demons, manipulated the clay around him, and knocked them all unconscious. For a while, a series of large trophies kept appearing in front of Storm's eyes. But when he looked carefully, he found that these big trophies were basically silver trophies. There is only one gold trophy. Monster King, what have you worked so hard for? Storm threw Ivankov to Lightning's side. Can't you recruit a few more powerful subordinates? Ivankov, who had not yet woken up, naturally could not hear Storm's complaints. The silver trophy and the gold trophy have no added effect on Storm now. That being the case, make a wish. The big golden trophy in the void melted quietly according to Storm's will. But what made him disappointed was that even with the 4-star trophy, he still didn't wish for the Devil's Ring. Another new ability. Storm looked at his ability column. Name, Death Blink. Rating, 4 stars. Effect, release a strong blast of wind by blinking at high speed. Comment, so cute. Hey. Art is coming. Storm wished to obtain Ivankov's Death Blink ability. But he did not intend to go on stage himself to experience the effect of this skill. Although Storm has seen many and varied special skills. These include but are not limited to Face-Breaking Fist, 1000-Year Kill, Kill with Girl in Arms, Crow on a Plane, and so on. But no matter what. Attacking by winking. This was indeed beyond his psychological endurance. Let's use the clay fruit to test the attack effect of Death Blink. Storm raised his right hand, and the clay gathered in his palm, shaping a vivid face. This big face looks very much like the face of the transvestite King Ivankov, except that it does not have the other's exaggerated and weird makeup. Death winks. Under Storm's control, the big face suddenly winked at him with its right eye. The two eyelids made of clay collided heavily with each other. The next moment, Big Face's right eye released a pale white shock wave visible to the naked eye. Bang! Explosions like firecrackers rang out in the cave of the new Ladyboy Paradise. The shock wave hit Storm's body, creating a palm-sized hole in his clothes. Just starting out, there is a lot to look forward to in the future. The clay on Storm's body surged, and the damaged parts of his clothes were quickly repaired. But this attack method still needs to be improved. Storm rubbed the face casually, and the big face that looked like the Demon King was immediately kneaded into a ball of clay. He continued to control the clay, imitating the performance of Death Blink. But this time, Death Blink is not directed to the outside, but to the inside. The clay suddenly contracts and squeezes. A violent shock wave exploded inside the clay ball. The surface of the clay ball, which looks round, has irregular undulations. The next moment. Snapped. The clay balls exploded like bombs. Pieces of clay fragments flew everywhere like flowers scattered by a fairy. Storm, who was closest to him, was hit hardest. The strong impact caused pieces of clay fragments to embed directly into his body. These clays. Storm took a piece of clay from the wound and held it in his palm to observe it for a while. Its hardness seems to be a little higher than ordinary clay. A flash of inspiration flashed through Storm's mind. It seems that he can use this artificial method to strengthen the clay created by the clay fruit. For example, hard clay, super light clay, heat-resistant clay, ceramic clay. Storm put the development of new properties of the clay fruit on the agenda. He had no intention of continuing to test his new skills in the new Ladyboy Paradise. Storm turned his head and glanced at the transvestites who had all fallen to the ground, and then searched the new transvestite park again. In less than a moment, Storm discovered several secret entrances to other floors of Impel Down in the new She-Male Paradise. It's just the entrance, all we need is a map. Storm thought about it and called out a silver trophy that he had just obtained by defeating the She-Male. Make a wish. The next moment, the silver trophy turned into a piece of yellow-brown craft paper. Name, Advanced City Structure Map. Rating, 3 stars. Effect, record the map of all 7 layers of hell in the city, including secret passages. Comment, I solemnly swear that I will not do bad things. This is it. Storm held the structure map of Impel Down City, and waved to Whitebeard 3, who immediately moved to his side. Then the two of them disappeared together into the nearest secret passage. Starting from the new She-Male Paradise on the 5.5th floor, Storm quickly moved through the secret passage. The 4th level, the Scorching Hell, with a blazing fire inside. The 3rd level, Hunger Hell, is a pile of dead bodies where the bodies of prisoners are placed. The 2nd level, the Beast Hell, the Beast's lair with a strong smell. The 1st layer, Red Lotus Hell, deep in the Bloody Needle Mountain. Storm's footprints are all over the secret passages in Impel Down. During this period, no jailer noticed his movements. These secret passages are also the basis for the survival of the new Ladyboy Paradise. Storm walked from the 5.5th floor to the first floor, and then from the first floor to the fourth floor. Finally, his steps stopped in front of the food warehouse of the burning hell. Food warehouse. Most of the food supplies in the entire advanced city are concentrated here. Storm avoided the eyes and ears that were monitoring the den mushy and sneaked into the food warehouse silently. Clay fruit silently assimilates the ground. A large amount of food piled up deep in the food warehouse began to sink as the ground softened. Not a while. These ingredients penetrated the floor of the burning hell and fell from the fourth floor to the fifth floor. All this process happened in extreme secrecy. By the time Storm moved a large amount of food from deep inside the food warehouse, no one had noticed the unusual changes here. The food is ready. Storm returned to the extremely cold hell without any surveillance with a lot of food. Then, he rushed to the new Shemale Paradise without stopping. When Storm was exploring the secret passages in Impel Down. In the new Shemale Paradise. Ivankov, the strongest one, woke up first, and he helped wake up the other transvestites who were knocked unconscious. When Storm arrived with food, Ivankov and the other transsexuals were immediately shocked. Vongala Storm. Under the expectant gazes of the other transvestites, Ivankov gritted his teeth and stood up. You want? Cook. Storm pushed the mountain of ingredients in front of the Shemale King. Cook this food as fast as you can. I'm hungry. Hungry, hungry. The corners of Ivankov's mouth twitched violently. The person who was beaten had no time to eat. The guy who beat me up actually said he was hungry. Didn't you hear that? Ivankov put his hands on his hips, turned around and urged the other transvestites. Hurry up and prepare the food. Under the order of the Queen, the transvestites immediately took action. 10 minutes later. The new Ladyboy Paradise was filled with an extremely rich aroma of food. Followed by portion after portion of delicious food was brought to Storm. The aroma of the food made him salivate. Storm called out the 2 high-star trophies he had just won. He first invested the Platinum Trophy into the Speed attribute. Then he invested the Diamond Trophy into the Strength attribute. Compared to the second Devil's Ring, which is still illusory. Storm still pays more attention to the improvement of his own actual strength. The reason why he didn't rush to use the Diamond Trophy before was not simply because of the Devil's Ring. The main reason is that after using the Big Trophy to improve the Physique attribute, you will face the dilemma of being hungry. Now Storm has borrowed enough food from the food warehouse. His first choice is of course, add points to Physique. Strength, 6 stars. Speed, 6 stars. The investment of 2 high-star trophies immediately raised Storm's strength and speed attributes to 6 stars. Take into account the endurance attribute that was previously upgraded to 6 stars. Storm's Physique attribute directly changed to Physique, 6 stars. This moment. Storm's strength, speed, and endurance attributes have all reached 6 stars. Although it cannot be called a hexagonal warrior yet. But it can definitely be said to be a triangle warrior. An intense feeling of hunger surged in his heart, and Storm put away the Big Trophy and put all his energy into fighting against food. The food brought from the food warehouse was quickly consumed. Storm was full and felt full of energy. He glanced maliciously at Ivankov standing beside him. After a good meal and a good drink, I just needed to find someone to stretch my muscles. It seemed that he sensed the malice in Storm's eyes. Ivankov coughed a few times, pretending to be weak. Ahem, my injuries are so serious. Do you think I will believe your lies? Storm saw through the disguise of the Shemale King at a glance. Besides, aren't you the user of the hormone fruit? The miracle man, who saved an entire country, according to legend, can't he even heal his own injuries? Vongala boy, haven't you heard a saying? Ivankov adjusted the crown on his head and spoke seriously. A healer does not heal himself. Then you should continue to keep your injuries. Storm shook his head, stood up and waved to Ivankov. I will continue to come to you later, Shemale King. I won't show mercy to you just because you are a severely injured patient. Seeing Storm was about to leave, Ivankov finally couldn't help but ask. Vongala boy, what you said before was about going to infinite hell, is that true? Of course it's true. Storm nodded. However, now is not the time to act. I'll tell you when the action is about to begin. When the time comes, you just need to cooperate with me. Cooperate with you? Ivankov was very upset. If you challenge Magellan, do I have to follow you? Of course, Storm saw Ivankov's ugly expression. He shook his head and said lightly. You have no choice, Shemale King. Ivankov understood this truth very well. The result of the battle just now has already explained everything. Ivankov was no match for the head jailer, Vongala Storm. His life and death, and the life and death of all the transvestites in the new transvestite paradise, all depend on Storm's thoughts. Under these circumstances, what else could Ivankov do except agree to Storm's request? Over the next 2 days, Storm did not continue to hunt for trophies, but instead quietly digested the many attributes and abilities he had previously improved. With the active cooperation of the Demon King Ivankov, Storm has adapted smoothly to his skyrocketing strength level. Physique attribute reaches 6 stars. Clay Fruit, reach 6 stars. Armament Hockey, and Observation Hockey, remain at 5 stars. All the branch physical techniques of the 6 styles were also maintained at 5 stars. In Ivankov's words, if he hadn't seen Storm's appearance clearly, he would have thought that the Charlotte family's greatest masterpiece was imprisoned in Impel Down. In other words, in Ivankov's eyes, Storm's current level of strength is almost the same as Charlotte Katakuri, the second-in-command of the big MOM pirates. Of course, family members know their own business. Let's put aside Ivankov's flattery. In Storm's opinion, there is still a big gap between his strength and Charlotte Katakuri. Don't say anything else. Charlotte Katakuri's ability to predict the future alone is beyond the reach of Storm's current abilities. But Storm was not discouraged. He can't predict the future now. Doesn't mean he won't in the future. Just like Storm didn't understand the art of clay before, but now. Impel Down, extremely cold hell, solitary cell. Storm swung his right hand and threw clumps of white clay into the air. By the time these clay balls fell to the ground, they had transformed into small white spiders. Next moment, these white spiders seemed to be suppressed by an invisible force, and their bodies suddenly squeezed and collapsed inward. Then, boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions rang out in the single cell, and deep holes were blown out on the floor of the cell. After 2 days of continuous practice, Storm has successfully integrated the explosion technique of Death Blink into Clay Fruit. Although the clay he created itself could not explode, but it can create explosions. Rounded up, Storm can also be considered half an artist. Tomorrow, the confinement period will end. Storm assimilated the cell into clay, and then completely smoothed out the ground that he had blasted into a pit. Then let's start the first test plan tonight. At dusk, after having a good meal and a few drinks, Storm left the new Shemale paradise. The moment he stepped into the dense forest outside, the forest ground was assimilated into clay and his figure immediately disappeared. Storm is not the earth that penetrates the extremely cold hell. Instead, it fused into one with the ground of the extreme cold hell and the entire Impulse City. With the help of the special effects of the Clay Fruit, after awakening, Storm moved quickly within the walls of Impel Down. Following the directions on the Advanced City Structure map, in his memory, he quietly came from the extremely cold hell to the burning hell. The hunt begins. After entering the burning hell, Storm did not rush to break away from the wall. With the help of the environmental camouflage effect of his color change ability, he searched the cell of the burning hell for a while and finally found his target. The guy with the highest bounty in the burning hell. That is the one with the ability of animal-type chameleon fruit, who was taught a lesson by Storm some time ago. Storm moved closer to the cell and expanded the range of influence of the Clay Fruit. Then, the user of the chameleon fruit whose bounty was close to 100 million berries was captured in an instant. During this period, the user of chameleon fruit ability was knocked unconscious on the spot without making a sound. A bronze trophy jumped out of the void. Storm simply ignored its existence. He assimilated the cell floor into clay and dragged the chameleon fruit user underground like he was dragging prey. After a few seconds of diving, Storm then broke free from the wall. But the place where he appeared was no longer the scorching hell, but the extremely cold hell. So, a prisoner imprisoned in the scorching hell was transferred to the extremely cold hell without anyone noticing. Storm brought the still unconscious ability user to the land of the extremely cold hell. The next operation is the focus of the experimental plan. Storm first took out 2 fruits that he had prepared in advance. These were also borrowed from the food warehouse. Hope everything is fine. Storm took a deep breath. He aimed the devil ring at a fruit and released the power of the clay fruit sealed inside. As time continues to pass, this ordinary fruit has undergone an extremely special change in appearance. Its originally brightly colored peel slowly turned into a clay-like pale color. One after another, mysterious and complex arabesque spiral patterns appeared on the pale skin of this fruit. After Storm finished transferring the supernatural power contained in the devil ring, a clay fruit was freshly produced. The appearance of this special para-human fruit is exactly the same as the one Storm saw in Akiji's office. Storm first checked his own ability column. He discovered that the ability of the clay fruit that had been upgraded to 6 stars before had now become dim. After the power of the devil fruit is transferred, the original devil fruit ability becomes unusable. This is, of course, Storm could no longer feel the power of the clay fruit that he had become completely accustomed to, and for a moment he found it difficult to adapt. He then looked at the clay fruit he had created. Name: clay fruit. Star rating: none. Description: para-human devil fruit. Effect: slightly. Information about the clay fruit displayed on the big trophy. It is exactly the same as the clay fruit that Storm had seen at the beginning. This is a genuine clay fruit. If someone else eats this clay fruit at this time, then the opponent will also directly gain the power of clay fruit. Preliminary preparations are complete. Storm first put the clay fruit aside. Then he looked at the user of the chameleon fruit who was forcibly brought here. Up to this point, the other party still hadn't woken up. But he didn't need to wake up again. Storm raised his right hand, subconsciously trying to release the power of the clay fruit. Suddenly he realized that his clay fruit ability had just been transferred away. Storm shook his head, walked forward, and grabbed the chameleon fruit user's throat with one hand. Click. Following a clear sound of bone cracking. Chameleon fruit, the user of this ability, loses his life instantly. Storm immediately aimed the devil ring at the heart of the corpse and tried to transfer the devil's power. This process happens extremely quickly. When Storm removes the devil's ring, he has gained a new ability. Devil fruit, chameleon fruit. It's exactly the same as the experimental result I imagined before. Storm looked at the new devil fruit ability and a hint of joy suddenly appeared on his face. I've noticed before that some of the functions of the devil's ring are similar to the dark fruit. However, the dark fruit can forcibly take away the devil fruit ability of the ability user. And in the effect description of the devil ring, it only targets devil fruit. Now it seems that the devil ring can also forcibly plunder the abilities of the ability users. Storm does not intend to try the ability of the chameleon fruit himself. He channels the demonic power of the devil's ring, just like guiding the power of the clay fruit just now. Storm transferred the devil's power of the chameleon fruit back to the remaining fruit. Under Storm's gaze, this fruit looked like it was suddenly painted with paint, and the skin was showing bright and eye-catching colors. Small, tiny bumps grow out from the surface of the fruit, densely packed like the skin of a chameleon. Animal type: chameleon fruit. Storm held the devil fruit and looked at the big trophy. The information presented by big trophy is the same. Name: chameleon fruit. Star rating: none. Description: animal devil fruit. Effect: the eater can transform into a chameleon and has the ability to transform into multiple stages. Comment: human fruit, mythical beast, accumula form. The real chameleon fruit. Storm weighed the animal-type devil fruit in his hand, and a huge stone in his heart fell. This devil fruit rebirth experiment went smoothly. This means that the comprehensive value of infinite hell is higher than Storm had previously expected. Based on Storm's previous experience, the number of prisoners with special abilities held in the city is not that large. In the first 5 floors, there are basically no prisoners with devil fruit abilities. Storm didn't know whether these prisoners with special abilities were imprisoned in infinite hell or used for other purposes. For example, becoming the raw material for Vegapunk's artificial devil fruit experiment. But there is one thing Storm is certain of. There must be many devil fruit users imprisoned in the infinite hell. Some of these prisoners have extremely powerful devil fruit abilities. According to legend, there is a mythical beast-type devil fruit that is even rarer than the natural type. There is also one in the infinite hell. Animal system dog fruit, mythical beast, 9-tailed fox form. Storm sealed the devil's power in the clay fruit into the devil ring again. His clay fruit ability then returned to its original awakened state. The 9-tailed fox fruit, a mythical beast, has the ability to transform. The image of Katarina Depin flashed through Storm's mind. This fruit is destined to be with me. The next morning, the arrival of a group of jailers broke the dead silence in the extremely cold hell. Sure, Storm. Hannibal, who was stuttering a little due to the cold wind, took out the key tremblingly and opened the door of the cell. Your confinement time is over. Magellan asked me to take you to see him. In the cell. Storm looked at Hannibal, who was speaking in a sloppy manner, and shook his head helplessly. Even if this guy wants to create a strong image of a tough boss in front of his subordinates. But you have only been in the extremely cold hell for a short time, and you are already frozen into this dog-like state. Not convincing at all. Hannibal. What? Have you also offended the director? No. Hannibal was a little confused by Storm's sudden question. Why do you ask that? Because looking at you now, I can't tell whether it's you who's being punished or me. Storm walked to Hannibal's side and raised his hand to release a ball of clay. Do you want me to add some clothes for you? It won't keep you warm, but at least it'll keep you out of the wind. Hannibal subconsciously wanted to nod and agree to Storm's suggestion. But he caught a glimpse of the prison guards following behind him and finally firmly refused. No need. Hannibal raised his right hand tremblingly, trying to make a bodybuilding move to show off his muscles. I'm very strong, Chu. Storm shook his head and walked out of the cell first. Hannibal quickly called on other jailers to follow suit. As soon as the group walked out, the cold wind of the extremely cold hell blew in my face. Hannibal shuddered suddenly. In order to force himself to divert his attention, he changed the subject. Storm, during the few days since you were sent to the extremely cold hell, the burning hell above has not been very peaceful. Burning hell. Storm's brows wrinkled slightly. In order to fill the energy deficit caused by the increase in physical strength, these days, he borrowed a lot of food from the food warehouse. Could it be that someone discovered it? But judging from Hannibal's tone, the things he wanted to talk about seemed to have nothing to do with him. What happened? Storm followed Hannibal's topic and he deliberately interrupted. Could it be that that bastard Shiryu has caused some big commotion again? Shiryu. This matter may indeed be related to Shiryu. Hannibal approached Storm mysteriously, actually wanting to use the latter's body to block the wind for him. Actually, a prisoner has gone missing from the burning hell. And he's a devil fruit user. The person you are talking about, could he be the user of the chameleon fruit? Storm said nothing, but glanced at Hannibal. Everyone says. Hannibal continued to add without further ado. That person with special abilities is also known as the Chameleon Man. He received an invitation from the devil, which is why he disappeared mysteriously. Even if we monitored Den Mushi, we couldn't find out how he disappeared. It's like he just evaporated from the face of the earth. The so-called Devil's Invitation. It is a hell legend widely circulated among the jailers in Impel Down. Because in recent years, occasionally, mysterious disappearances occur in Impel Down. Prisoners who were apparently being held well would suddenly disappear one day without leaving any trace. Strange and mysterious disappearances, paired with the hellish atmosphere of Advanced City. Thus was born the rumor of the Devil's Invitation. In fact, The so-called invitation from the devil is nothing more than Ivankov strengthening the team of the new transvestite paradise. Okay. Anyway. The invitation from the She-Male King seems to be not much different from the invitation from the devil. Cough cough. The disappearance of the user with the ability of chameleon fruit was discovered by the jailer of the city. This matter was already expected by Storm. After all, there are too many surveillance den mushy in the city. The floor where the scorching hell is located is guarded by Magellan himself, and the monitoring is more stringent. It is understandable that the missing prisoners would be discovered. Fortunately, I was quite cautious in my previous actions, so I didn't reveal anything, and I avoided all the surveillance den mushy. Storm thought silently in his heart. Otherwise, the one who came to pick me up might not be Hannibal, but Magellan himself. At this moment, Hannibal was heard speaking again. But Storm, what you just said reminded me. That chameleon man was most likely killed by that bastard Shelio. And he even destroyed the body. The chameleon man was killed. And his body was destroyed. Hearing this, Storm's mouth twitched slightly. I have to say, Hannibal's intuition is sometimes quite sharp. How did he guess that the user of the chameleon fruit had been destroyed? Yes. After successfully obtaining the chameleon fruit, Storm also properly disposed of the body of the original ability user, the prisoner with a bounty of more than 90 million. After all, he is not a devil. I can't bear to see corpses left in the wilderness. So Storm sent the other's body to the sea of fire of the burning hell. Cremation. I wonder how many pirates who fell into the sea and were eaten by fish wanted to enjoy this treatment but couldn't. Storm calmly changed the subject. You were talking about Shelio just now. How is that bastard now? Shiryu, he killed a lot of people again. Hannibal pursed his lips and spoke softly. After we left Magellan's office that day, Shelio was also sent to the infirmary for detoxification. But later, I heard from other prison guards. Shilua carried his famous sword, Thunderstorm, and fought his way from the infirmary on the first floor of the sea to the scorching hell on the fourth floor. If Magellan hadn't stopped him in time, that guy might have rushed directly into the extremely cold hell to find you. Storm blinked. This subsequent reaction is quite consistent with Shelio's character. Even as the deputy director of Advanced City, Shelio did not take his job and responsibility seriously. This guy's only hobby is killing people. At first, he just killed prisoners. Later, he turned his butcher knife on his colleagues. Later, he was imprisoned in the infinite hell. Storm asked excitedly. What did Magellan do with Shelio? Did he lock him up in the lowest level of infinite hell? That's not the case. Hannibal shook his head. But since that day, Magellan has always asked Shelio not to leave his sight. This is a bit difficult, isn't it? Storm sensed something was wrong. Magellan was not a normal person, he had diarrhea for almost 10 hours a day. We can't let Shelio stay by your side for the entire 10 hours, right? Ha ha ha. Hannibal couldn't help but burst out laughing. This is the real punishment from that big bastard Magellan on that super big bastard Shelio. Chatting and laughing all the way. Storm and Hannibal finally left the range of the extreme cold hell. The two took the prison elevator together, leading to the fourth floor of the burning hell and the director's office. What does Magellan want from me? Storm asked in the elevator. Are you planning to hold another peace conference like last time? Hearing this, Hannibal looked at Storm strangely. Learned the lesson from last time. Unless that bastard Magellan's brain is filled with venom. Otherwise, why would he let Storm and Shelio stay in the same place again? That won't happen again. Hannibal shook his head and spoke seriously. As for the reason why Magellan came to you, it might be because he wanted to tell you some truths. It has to be admitted that Hannibal had a very deep understanding of Magellan. The moment Storm stepped into the director's office, then I saw a brick-like tome on Magellan's desk. Propel City Jailer Rules. At this time in the director's office, apart from Magellan, there was only the deputy warden Domino. There was no sign of Shelio at all. Director. Before the Magellan small classroom started, Storm quickly spoke up and interrupted the spell. Good morning. Did you detox today? Good morning, Storm. Magellan had a stern face and had no intention of joking at all. You have been in Impel Down for a relatively short time, and although you have done an excellent job, you have also made a number of mistakes. Director. Storm interrupted the spell again. If no one offends me, I will not offend anyone. He attacked me before I attacked Shiryu. Magellan suddenly felt a headache. What Storm said is indeed true. If Shiryu hadn't made that inexplicable slash in the cafeteria, there is no way the relationship between Storm and Shiryu could have deteriorated to this point. Just when Magellan was struggling with how to discipline his subordinates. Just listen to Storm continue. Director, I have a new way to solve the problem. Solve the problem. Magellan raised his head and looked at Storm. Solve the problem between you and Shiryu. Of course. Storm nodded. The conflict between Shiryu and I is nothing more than the fact that the previous two duels did not result in a clear winner. As long as I fight with Shiryu again, we can truly determine who is better and who is the winner. Then all the conflicts between him and me will be solved. Can't solve the problem. Then solve the people who create the problem. You are quite a clever fellow, Storm. Magellan was speechless. He kept stopping Shiryu and Storm from getting into a conflict. Was it to protect Shiryu from being beaten by Storm? It was obvious that Magellan was trying to protect Storm, the newcomer. The director had no time to comment. A cold voice came from the toilet in his office. You are asking for death. Magellan finally agreed to Storm's suggestion. After all, there is no better way, right? However, Magellan still made a request regarding the duel between the two. As the director, he needs to watch the entire battle and even intervene to stop the battle when necessary. Magellan's request. Whether it was Storm or Shiryu, they all agreed without hesitation. Magellan strongly suspected that neither of these two guys took his warning seriously, but he could find no evidence. A few minutes later, everyone left the director's office and came to the open space outside the prison. Burning hell, sea of fire. Storm and Shiryu stood on both sides of the open space, their eyes meeting and colliding in the air. The air was filled with a strong smell of gunpowder. Shiryu's eyes were like a hungry wolf. He stared at Storm, his right hand on the hilt of the famous sword, Thunderstorm, at his waist. This time, he won't be careless. Little devil. Go to hell. Without any warning, Shiryu instantly drew out the famous sword, Thunderstorm, from his waist and swung it heavily forward. The blade, flashing with an eerie bloody light, drew a perfect circular trajectory in the air. The next moment, the sword of Thunderstorm rolled up the air and released a flying slash in the shape of a crescent moon. Laugh. The brutal and ferocious flying slash crossed half of the sea of fire of the scorching hell in the blink of an eye and arrived in front of Storm. The momentum of the flying slash dissipated, suppressing the raging flames around it close to the ground and almost extinguishing them directly. Facing Shiryu's flying slash, Storm was not at all flustered. He raised his right leg, concentrated all his strength on his legs and feet, and kicked forward violently several times. Lanjiao. All of a sudden, Storm kicked out several extremely sharp vacuum slashes to meet the crescent-shaped sword energy that was coming towards him. Under the gaze of everyone, the flying slash and the vacuum kick collided with each other. Rumbling. Accompanied by several deafening roars, the two shock waves offset each other's power in midair. The rolling shock waves spread in all directions, directly blowing out many of the fires burning in the surroundings. 6 styles. Storm kick. Shiryu's knowledge was not weak, and he saw the essence of Storm's ability at a glance. Considering Storm's naval background, it is not surprising that he knows the 6 styles. Shiryu gripped the famous sword tightly in his hand, and a dark-armed color domineering emerged from his forearm, wrapping around the blade of Thunderstorm. Next moment, Shiryu's figure left a trail of afterimages on the spot, and he approached Storm at an extremely fast speed. And this is the moment Storm has been waiting for. White clay gushed out from his body, wrapping around his surface and causing his size to swell to an enormous size. By the time Shiryu arrived in front of Storm, the latter had grown into a little giant monster. Shiryu's eyes narrowed slightly, and the Thunderstorm in his hand suddenly turned into a cold light and flashed towards the clay giant. The attack of Thunderstorm was like raindrops falling from the sky, and the sharp sword lights almost formed a line. Drizzle. But Storm's reaction was not slow at all. The clay giant swung its gigantic fist and smashed hard at the famous sword that was attacking from the front. The white clay is also wrapped with armament haki, adding to its power. Giant armed fist. At the same time, the fist wrapped in armament haki and the famous sword collided fiercely. It was as if a bolt of thunder struck from the blue in the scorching hell, and the sound of the battle was loud enough to pierce the clouds and split the rocks. Boom. The muscles in Shiryu's right arm bulged high, and he concentrated all his strength on the thunderstorm in his hand. He thought Storm was just a clever kid. I never expected that the opponent's true strength is so powerful. Shiryu still gritted his teeth and persisted, wrestling with the clay giant. But on the other side, Storm was distracted and controlling another means of attack. The power of the clay fruit silently assimilated the land of the burning hell. Not good. Shiryu's heart suddenly skipped a beat. The ground beneath his feet suddenly softened, turning from a hard floor into soft clay. Without the support from his feet, Shiryu's whole body tilted and his original strength began to loosen. The clay giant transformed by Storm retracted his right fist slightly, then smashed it forward heavily. Boom. Shiryu was immediately knocked dozens of meters away, and he rolled on the ground like a rolling gourd. When Shiryu finally managed to steady himself and looked up ahead, he was shocked to find that the ground beneath Storm's feet had been completely assimilated into a piece of clay. Clay fruit, the power of awakening. Clay rain. Storm assimilated the entire ground into clay, and dozens of clay strips grew out of the ground and attacked the opponent together. Shiryu clenched the thunderstorm in his hand and swung the sword repeatedly while retreating. The blood-red sword blade swung in front of him, creating a protective wall that was impenetrable to water, like a shield. As soon as the long strip of clay created by Storm touched the sword light barrier transformed by thunderstorm, it was cut directly off. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and his mind moved slightly. There was still a part of the clay strips that turned into heavy rain and bombarded Shiryu continuously. But most of the remaining clay strips were combined in 2s and 3s under Storm's will. The clay strips, which were only as thick as an arm, expanded in diameter after continuous fusion. It was as if a human's arm suddenly grew larger and became a giant's arm. At this moment, the diameter of each clay strip is nearly 1 meter. A heavy rain of clay. Storm manipulated these giant clay strips and attacked Shiryu without stopping. The sword light barrier formed by Shiryu's thunderstorm has a limited protective area after all. It was able to withstand the previous clay rain, but it can't withstand the current clay rainstorm. Shiryu also understood this principle. He stopped wielding thunderstorm and just tried his best to improve his perception. A scarlet light shone in his eyes, and he used his observation haki to capture the attack routes of those thick clay arms. Boom. 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 Every time a giant clay hand strikes the ground of the burning hell, a loud roar occurs. Shiryu, who was using all his strength to display his observation haki, fled frantically in the face of the endless attacks, like a civet running around in a melon field. The violent bombardment of the giant clay fist lasted for several minutes. Shiryu finally realized that something was wrong. He originally thought that with Storm's physical strength, he would not be able to sustain an attack of this scale for a long time. But he was almost tired of running, and the attack of the giant clay fist showed no sign of stopping. The clay seemed endless, and the continuous attacks did not give Shi any time to breathe. Shiryu looked at Storm at the other side through the gap of the giant clay fist. What made him embarrassed was that Storm still looked calm and composed. It seemed that the battle just now did not consume any of his energy at all. We must interrupt that kid's attack rhythm. Shiryu continued to dodge for a while and finally found a brief moment to catch his breath. He swung the thunderstorm in his hand vigorously and directly cut off a giant clay fist. He kicked the broken clay fist forward, disrupting the attack route of another giant clay fist. With the help of this operation, Shiryu finally gained a brief attacking opportunity for himself. He held the famous sword, Thunderstorm, poured his strength into the sword, and slashed towards Storm. The blood-red flying slash swept through the air, its surface taking on an irregular shape, crooked and twisted, like lightning. The great swordsman used all his strength in the flying slash, easily tearing apart the clay arm made of ordinary clay. The blood-red sword energy came to Storm with unstoppable force. Storm was unmoved. With a thought, a huge shield as tall as a person appeared in front of him. Clay shield. The pitch-black armament Haki wraps around the surface of the clay shield, increasing its protective capabilities. Next moment, Shiryu's flying slash hit the clay shield accurately. However, the clay shield wrapped with armament Haki has a defense that is incomparable to the previous. Clay. Shiryu's slash failed to break through the clay shield. Such an attack would not be able to threaten Storm behind the clay shield. But Shiryu still managed to buy himself a rare moment of breathing through this flying slash. The tireless giant clay fist finally stopped attacking at this moment. Hoo-hoo. Shiryu stood there, breathing slightly. He was just about to raise his knife and move forward to continue attacking Storm. Suddenly, I saw that the giant clay fists just now, as if they had received an invisible command, began to shrink rapidly towards Storm's direction. What is that? Shiryu consciously raised his vigilance. But the changes in the clay are not determined by his personal will. Storm gathered all the clay and piled it around him and on top of each other. As the clay continues to change, a gigantic Buddha statue, towering above the earth, appeared deep in the sea of fire of the scorching hell. The body of this giant Buddha is extremely huge, but even larger are the densely packed arms behind it. 100. 1,000. Densely packed white arms piled together, blocking out the sun, countless in number. Storm sat cross-legged on top of the white Buddha and launched a final attack on Shiryu. Awakening clay fruit, true thousand hands. Endless giant fists of clay slammed into the ground of the scorching hell. In an instant, the ground shattered and the space collapsed, accompanied by countless gravel and flames. Shiryu was knocked directly from the burning hell to the extremely cold hell by Storm. Diamond Trophy, Rain Shilu. Trophy star rating, 6 stars. The floor between the burning hell and the extremely cold hell was violently blasted through by Storm. Above was a blazing sea of fire. Below is a cold ice field. The huge temperature difference created a terrifying air pressure difference between the two hells. The moment the earth broke, an unprecedented powerful storm arose in the scorching hell. My burning hell. Hannibal, who was watching the battle from a distance, held his head in his hands with an expression of extreme horror. My burning hell was pierced by Storm. Magellan. What did you stop, you bastard? We clearly agreed on this before. Magellan had the power to end the battle at any time. But the burning hell was destroyed by Storm. Magellan just watched from the sidelines. In fact, Magellan was also completely shocked. He originally thought that Storm was asking for trouble by challenging Shiryu. The result was unexpected. Storm's strength is unexpectedly so strong. Look at the 1,000-armed Buddha statue that stands tall. Magellan couldn't imagine how many people in Impel Down could withstand Storm's attack. But Hannibal's shouting brought Magellan back to his senses in time. He braved the strong wind, rushed to Storm's front quickly, and released the power of the poison fruit in time. Magellan's originally tall and mighty body instantly turned into a poisonous man covered in venom. 2 ferocious poisonous dragons grew out of Magellan's body. They crossed each other in midair, forming a huge X symbol. Stop it. Storm. Magellan shouted. The battle is over. Storm sat cross-legged on top of the Buddha, looking down at Magellan below. At this moment, a very subtle feeling suddenly emerged in his heart. Once upon a time. The director of Impel Down, who is extremely powerful in Storm's eyes. It looks like this at this moment. It's just a small, 3-inch purple potato cube. Without spending too much effort, he defeated Rain Shiryu, which made Storm's mentality swell by several points. There is no enemy ahead of us. From now on, I will stand in the sky. Storm took a deep breath. He looked at the star rating of the Devil's Ring. I looked at the star rating of Clay Fruit again. My inflated mentality suddenly calmed down. How can you be invincible in the world if you don't even have 9-star strength? Storm controlled the huge white Buddha, and the clay statue was transformed and melted like a candle. The clay fell to the ground and quickly repaired the shattered ground of the burning hell. It didn't take a while. The ground of the scorching hell was restored to its original state with white clay. The storm, which had been very fierce just now, also subsided. Storm returned to the ground and nodded to Magellan. Director. Magellan didn't know what to say to this overly powerful subordinate. In the end, he could only put on a stern face and adopt a businesslike attitude. Are you satisfied with this result? Not so satisfied. Storm shook his head and spoke seriously. Shilu's strength is much weaker than I thought. This comment comes from the heart. In Storm's opinion, Shiryu's ability to withstand blows was indeed much weaker than he had imagined. The Rain Shiryu, who was so legendary among the prisoners in Impel Down, couldn't even do a single sit-up. Bad review. With such a low resistance, how will you survive on the sea in the future? To know. The scale of the attack of Awakening Clay Fruit, True Thousand Hands, just now seemed exaggerated. But in fact, Storm has not yet wrapped the armament hockey around the fist of True Thousand Hands. An ordinary clay fist can easily take care of Shiryu. Can this also be called the Iron Wall of the advancing city? Could it be that Magellan is the big wall of Impel Down? And Shilu of Rain is the second wall that pushes forward the city? Of course, Magellan could not hear Storm's complaints. But the other party's attitude still gave Magellan a headache. This troublemaker. Storm, can you stop targeting Shiryu now? Magellan had no choice but to turn the topic back to work. Can you focus on your job? Work. Storm caught the key words and his eyes suddenly lit up. Of course. Director. I love my job. Storm fully exerted his subjective initiative. However, the management of the first 5 floors was not difficult for me at all. I am now applying to go to the 6th level, the Infinite Hell. No. Magellan rejected Storm's job application without hesitation. There is no room for negotiation on this matter. After saying this, Magellan didn't even look at Storm, he waved to Hannibal on the other side. Hannibal. Go to the 5th floor below. Bring Shilu back. Aye. Hannibal pointed at himself. Going to the freezing hell again. Magellan and Hannibal walked away together. Storm was the only one left there. He looked at the backs of the current director and the future director and shook his head silently. Magellan's response. Storm had actually anticipated this. Every prisoner held in the Infinite Hell is under strict guard by the world government. Infinite Hell, the stakes are high. Even among the prisoners held in Advanced City, many were unaware that there was a 6th floor in the prison. The jailers in the Advancing City are qualified to go to the 6th floor. But the problem is, Storm's personal qualifications are really too shallow. As the director, Magellan did not trust Storm enough. If Storm, like Hannibal, had worked diligently in pushing City for more than 10 years, then he can go to the Infinite Hell for visiting at will. But Storm is not Hannibal after all. He wasn't even a hardcore government guy, he was sent by the Navy. Of course. If Storm is willing to work hard in Impel Down to gain experience for a few years, then Magellan's trust in him would definitely increase significantly. But still those 4 words. Time waits not for us. The storm of the new era is about to emerge, how can we stand still? Storm let out a breath of foul air. In that case, let's proceed according to the original plan. Storm called out the diamond trophy he had just obtained and threw it into the clay fruit. Clay fruit, 6.5 stars. 6.5 star devil fruit ability. In the next few days, Storm maintained his daily exercise during the day and continued to develop the clay fruit. With the effect of inspiration burst, Storm successfully researched a lot of awakening skills. Also, based on previous inspiration, Storm also developed 2 kinds of special clay with new properties. Super light clay is softer in texture and lighter in weight than ordinary clay. Heat-resistant clay has a hardness far exceeding that of ordinary clay and has first-class fire resistance. The sea of fire in the scorching hell is completely ineffective against it. Super light clay comes second. The key is heat-resistant clay. Storm developed heat-resistant clay, which was a significant enhancement to his own strength. In the past, when he used the ability of clay fruit, due to the soft nature of clay, many attacks fail to achieve the desired effect. But heat-resistant clay is different. This thing is hard. Which is heavier, 1 kilogram of cotton or 1 kilogram of iron? The answer to this question is self-evident. But which one is more effective, hitting someone with a kilogram of cotton or hitting someone with a kilogram of iron? Of course it's a piece of iron. The hardness of heat-resistant clay is as different from the original clay as the difference between a piece of iron and cotton. Based on the heat-resistant clay, Storm carried out further development. Finally, he developed a special kind of clay that was extremely hard and had a round and smooth surface like jade. It is more accurate to say it is porcelain clay rather than clay. Or just ceramics. Storm is like a human processing machine, turning the original clay into ceramics through fine processing. In addition to further developing the properties of the clay fruit, Storm also did one more thing during these days. Every night, Storm would use the assimilation ability of the clay fruit to sneak into the 6th layer of the infinite hell without anyone noticing. The basic environment of the infinite hell, the cells where the prisoners are located, and the location information of the monitored Den Mushi. Storm continues to collect information about infinite hell. This is an advance check. As Storm's strength grows day by day, he is constantly craving for a higher star level, big trophy. He cannot enter infinite hell through normal means. Once he chooses to break into the infinite hell, it basically means that he has completely broken with his past identity as a jailer. This requires Storm to obtain maximum benefit in one action. But the infinite hell is too big. There are too many prisoners held in the infinite hell. In Storm's eyes, there were only a few valuable prisoners. The first one is naturally the crescent hunter Katarina Depin, who possesses the nine-tailed fox fruit. The second is Bondi Waldo, the world destroyer, who possesses the Momo fruit. There is also the evil king Alvaro Pizarro, the huge battleship San Juan the Wolf, the big barrel Basque Chote. If Storm wants to successfully complete his hunting plan, he can't pursue too much blindly. He must achieve the highest output in the shortest time and get the most kills. This day, Storm completed all the preparations. The infinite hell hunting plan officially begins. Push City, first level, Red Lotus Hell. Storm walked quickly to the target person. Without waiting for the other party to react, he raised his right fist and smashed it hard into the other party's face. Boom. The deputy director was caught off guard and flew backwards. Storm's first target. It was no one else but Rain Shiryu. A fierce fight broke out again between the chief jailer and the deputy chief. This news spread rapidly throughout the entire Impel Down city as if it had wings. 4th floor, burning hell, director's office, toilet. What? Storm and Shiryu are fighting again. Magellan, who was detoxifying, suddenly felt his anus tighten when he heard the news report from his subordinates. Why this time? That bastard Shilio, why does he always provoke Storm for no reason? Report to the director. The jailer standing outside the toilet said loudly. According to the information from the monitoring room, this time, the warden took the initiative to attack the deputy director. Storm, that overenergetic bastard. With a roar, Magellan walked out of the toilet, pulling at his belt. His face was tinged with a thick purple aura, and it was obvious that the toxins had not been completely eliminated. I must lock him up in the freezing hell. No. I'm going to lock him up in infinite hell. Ordinary prison guards did not have the courage to interrupt the furious director. At this moment, a figure suddenly pushed open the door of the director's office and rushed in from outside. Magellan. Hannibal, with a panicked look on his face, quickly ran to Magellan's side. He was about to say something when he saw the purple poison on Magellan's face and immediately took a few steps back. That bastard Shilio is fighting with Storm again. While reporting the news, Hannibal applied eye drops to Shilua. It must be that Storm didn't hit me hard enough last time. Magellan, you see that guy Shilua always makes mistakes, you should lock him up in the infinite hell. Then, let me take the position of deputy director. Finally, you give me the position of director. Boom. Magellan raised his sandbag-sized fist and hit Hannibal's head hard. The latter immediately covered his head and crouched down to defend. Ah. It hurts. It's already this late, and you're still joking. Magellan picked up Hannibal and ran out of the director's office with him. Hurry up and control those two guys. This is the key. Magellan and Hannibal left the director's office on the fourth floor together and took the moving elevator to the Red Lotus Hell. At this time, a figure emerged from the shadows outside the director's office door. Storm looked at the director and the warden who had already moved away, and immediately moved to the monitoring room on the fourth floor. The person who just had a conflict with Shiryu in the Red Lotus Hell. In fact, it is just Storm's clay clone. The real Storm has already stepped into the monitoring room. The prison guards in the monitoring room saw Storm walk into the room and subconsciously raised their hands to salute. Master Jailer. Chief Jailer. The next moment, everyone realized something was wrong. On the surveillance screen of Crimson Hell, Storm is still fighting with Shiryu. Then the one who entered the monitoring room at this time. Who could it be? Sorry. Storm raised his right hand and released strips of clay, knocking out all the surveillance personnel immediately. Several big trophies popped up in front of his eyes. That's even lower than the bronze trophy. Black Iron Trophy, Jailer. Trophy Star, 1 star. Although, ordinary jailers who have a star rating can be considered elite. Storm ignored the Black Iron trophies that popped up and moved outside the monitoring room again. He burst out with agility and moved to the front of the elevator. Storm moved too fast. When he knocked out all the prison guards in the monitoring room and arrived at the elevator entrance, Magellan, Hannibal and other talents barely reached the first level of the Red Lotus Hell. Storm saw that the elevator finally stopped on the first floor, and he used the ability of the clay fruit again. A large amount of clay rushed into the elevator shaft through the gap and completely blocked the elevator system. Thus, if people in the Red Lotus Hell want to come to the Infinite Hell, they must slowly climb the stairs. After doing all this, Storm assimilated the ground beneath his feet directly into clay and dived into it. Less than a moment. Storm came from the burning hell on the 4th floor to the new Shemale Paradise on the 5.5 floor. In the new Shemale Paradise, there is a special Den Den Mushi that is exactly the same as the surveillance Den Den Mushi in Impel Down. Ivankov and other transsexuals rely on this surveillance Den Den Mushi to learn about the movements of people in the city. As early as when Storm threw a punch at Shirlio, Ivankov and others noticed the movement and gathered in front of the surveillance screen. Just when Storm arrived at the new Shemale Paradise, Ivankov and other transsexuals were still enjoying the contents of the surveillance footage with great interest. Left hook. Right hook. Yes. That's the feeling. Yes. Hit him. That bastard Yuziliu. He deserves to be beaten. Amid the noisy voices, the Shemale King Ivankov looked around and saw the unannounced guest. Vongala Storm. Aren't you fighting that bastard Rain Shiryu up there? When the Demon King Ivankov saw Storm suddenly appear, he was immediately frightened. Before Storm could answer the question, Ivankov reacted quickly and said in disbelief, "Is the you above a fake?" Storm had no intention of explaining to Ivankov. "My action is about to begin, Shemale King, it's time for you to be useful." Without waiting for Ivankov's response, Storm took out his personal Den Den Mushi and dialed a number. Brew, brew. The Den Den Mushi in Ivankov's arms also started ringing. "Keep in touch." After saying this, the ground beneath Storm's feet softened into clay again, and his figure disappeared underground. I've been through this incident. The new Shemale Paradise, which was bustling with people just now, suddenly became quiet. "My queen. What should we do? Do you want to listen to that guy?" Lightning, who had recovered from his serious injuries, shook his head at Ivankov at this time. His point was simple: Vongala Storm was not trustworthy. "We have no choice." Ivankov shook his head, took out the Den Den Mushi in his arms and answered the call directly. "Vongala, what do you want me to do?" "You, go to the big staircase of the extreme cold hell and stop everyone who wants to come down." Storm's calm voice came from the Den Den Mushi. "Ivankov, this is your mission. If you want to share this task with other ladyboys in the new Ladyboy Paradise, I also welcome them to go to Infinite Hell." Infinite Hell. Ivankov looked at the surveillance camera Den Den Mushi and waved his hand, signaling his men to turn the surveillance screen. "You have reached the 6th floor now. The 6th level, Infinite Hell." Storm fell from the ceiling to an open space. He looked up at a surveillance den Mushy in the corner. His sharp gaze seemed to penetrate the surveillance den Mushy and directly came to the new Shemale paradise on the 5th floor. Shemale King, you are looking at me now, right? Ivankov's heart skipped a beat and he waved at his men again, signaling them to turn the screen back. Ah, this. Ha. Ivankov laughed. Magellan has arrived at the Red Lotus Hell, you better be careful. Infinite Hell. Storm stopped talking to the Ogre King. He placed the den Mushy on his shoulder and used it as a makeshift walkie-talkie. And at this time, the prisoners in the Infinite Hell also saw this unconventional newcomer. Jailer uniform. Ha. When did new people come to Impel Down? This new guy is quite handsome. Come in quickly and let me take a good look at your butt. For a moment, obscene words came from all directions. Storm's expression was calm, and he released the power of the clay fruit without hesitation. The land of Infinite Hell was assimilated by the power of his devil fruit, forming a huge area of clay. A huge, lifelike dragon head emerged from the clay, opened its bloody mouth and sprayed out clumps of clay. Clay Dragon Bomb. Every prisoner in the Infinite Hell is a tough guy who once stirred up trouble in the sea outside, and they have good eyesight and knowledge. They all saw Storm release his ability, and they all recognized the effect of this ability. Mud. Clay. Ha. Are you trying to drown me in mud, little brat? This ability is much weaker than that diarrhea bastard Magellan's poison fruit. The prisoner's laughter was not over yet. The clay balls ejected by the clay dragon bullets had already shot into the cell where they were. Next moment, wailing sounds one after another rang out in the Infinite Hell. Ouch. Ouch. Why is this clay hard? Wait. This isn't just any clay. This is. The prisoners didn't have time to finish their words. The clay cannonball shot into the cell suddenly collapsed inward, and then exploded with a loud bang. Boom. 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 Suddenly, a series of continuous explosions were heard in the Infinite Hell. Every ball of clay that Storm just threw out was actually ceramic clay that could be compressed and exploded. The power unleashed by this ceramic bomb is no less than that of ordinary gunpowder weapons. Amidst the roar that filled the sky, Storm walked straight to a cell. A tall, scary-looking woman was imprisoned in the cell. The most evil female pirate in history, Crescent Moon Hunter, Katarina Dupin. In the cell, Katarina Dupin chuckled, her expression showing no sign of panic. I am Katarina Dupin. Jailer, what do you want from me? I just think. Storm raised his right hand and released the power of the clay fruit. Strands of white clay swarmed into the cell like poisonous snakes, wrapping around and biting Katarina Dupin. Let me borrow your mythical beast species, nine-tailed fox fruit. Infinite Hell, with continuous artillery fire and roars. But Katarina Dupin, who was only separated from Storm by a fence, still heard every word he said. You want my nine-tailed fox fruit? Aha. Katarina Dupin gave a weird, witch-like laugh. You can come and get it. The moment she finished speaking, the clay white snake has invaded the cell. Katarina Dupin jumped up from her spot and rolled several times in the air. She was like an acrobat in a circus, dodging the attacks of the clay white snakes with ease. Katarina Dupin's wrists were still shackled with sea stone shackles. But the shackles had almost no restrictive effect on her and did not affect her ability to move at all. Storm had some expectations about Katarina Dupin's performance, so he was not too surprised at this time. Sea stone does have a very strong restraining effect on people with special abilities. However, how strong this restraining effect is varies from person to person. Some people with special abilities will become powerless as soon as they come into contact with sea stone, and they will be unable to move at all, like a puddle of mud. Some people with special abilities can still be alive and well even if they were sea stone torture instruments, but they just can't use their abilities. In the country of Wano deep in the New World, the Beast's pirates even built several sea stone stadiums, crossed out several sea stone prisons. The prisoners in Tuin prison were still able to carry out their daily labor even while wearing sea stone shackles. As the user of the mythical beast nine-tailed fox fruit, Katarina Dupin has extremely strong physical fitness. She can move freely while wearing sea stone shackles. This is understandable. But this does not affect Storm's subsequent attacks. He doesn't have enough time to play animal taming games with Katarina Deppen. Under Storm's control, the clay white snakes that invaded the cell quickly gathered together. Countless pieces of clay were mixed together into a huge ball of clay, which stood in the cell. What the hell is this ball? The moment Katarina Deppen landed, her beast-like eyes stared at the big clay ball. Her fighting nerves were constantly sending her fatal warnings. Danger, danger, danger. Click, click. Under the gaze of Katarina Deppen, the surface of the perfectly round clay ball suddenly cracked into several cracks. If the clay ball projected by the clay dragon bullet outside has an explosion power level equivalent to Death Blink, then the explosion power of the oversized clay ball in the cell at this moment is enough to rival the Blink of Hell of the She-Male King. A famous quote flashed through Storm's mind. All fear is due to insufficient firepower. The next moment, a strong shock wave exploded from the inside of the clay ball, and the entire clay ball was immediately blown into pieces. Boom. An explosion far louder than the roar next to it sounded in the cell. The clay ball was like an oversized bomb, and the powerful blast wave swept through the entire cell in an instant. Katarina Deppen could dodge those clay white snakes, but she couldn't dodge the ubiquitous explosions. At the moment when the clay ball exploded, Katarina Deppen was the first to be hit, and was knocked directly into the cell wall by the horrific shock wave. The infinite hell wall, which had existed for who knows how many years, was knocked into a human-shaped pit by Katarina Deppen. Ahem, whoa. Katarina Deppen felt severe pain in every part of her body and couldn't help coughing up a large mouthful of blood. The bright red blood spilled like a fountain, leaving many mottled marks on her tattered prison uniform. You guy. Katarina Deppen ignored the severe pain in her body. She looked at Storm with anger and fear. You actually want to kill me? In Impel Down, no one except Magellan has the power to deal with prisoners at will. Not even Rain Shiryu can do that. At this moment, Katarina Deppen was really scared. Let's just talk about the treatment of prisoners. Infinite Hell is definitely the best among the 6 layers of hell in Impel Down. Only the comfort level of the new She-Male Paradise is higher than that of the Infinite Hell. Among the prisoners in the Infinite Hell, there are basically no death row prisoners. After the prisoners were locked up in the Infinite Hell, there was only one ending left for them. Sit and die in the Infinite Hell. But no matter what, at least I can survive. Katarina Deppen can no longer remember how many years she has lived in the Infinite Hell. But who would want to die if they can live? Katarina Deppen's recent series of words completely exposed her panic-stricken heart. But Storm was not moved at all. He just felt that the woman in front of him was more durable than Yushilu. He is truly worthy of being a user of the mythical beast devil fruit. Storm once again manipulated the power of the clay fruit. He threw one large clay bomb after another into Katarina Deppen's cell. After the bombing just now, Storm has determined the durability of the Infinite Hell's cells. Definitely stronger than the criminal. That's enough. Storm only wanted to blow up Katarina Deppen, not to destroy Infinite Hell. He showed no mercy in setting off one large clay bomb after another. Rumbling sounds continued to erupt in the cell, and amidst the prolonged explosions, there were also some of Katarina Deppen's roars. The roar sounded like a wild beast that had fallen into a trap and was roaring madly. Hysterical, like a madman. Just as time goes by, this legendary, most vicious female pirate in history, the infamous Crescent Moon Hunter. Katarina Deppen's howls continued to grow fainter. Storm threw dozens of large clay bombs into the cell. The entire floor of the cell was lifted up by a layer of clay bombs. Only then did his observation Haki sense Katarina Deppen's aura, which had changed from being strong at first to being imperceptibly weak. As expected of a future member of the Blackbeard Pirates. To be able to survive the infinite hell of the goo-breeding fight to the end. Katarina Deppen's strength is definitely among the best among all the prisoners of Infinite Hell. Several thoughts flashed through Storm's mind. Without waiting for the smoke in the cell to clear, Storm walked forward and went straight into the cell like a pool of fluid. The moment he appeared in the cell, a hand clamped his ankle like an iron clamp. You guy. Storm looked down. Katerina Depin was covered in blood and looked like a rag doll. He was staring at him with a look of extreme resentment and despair. Even if I go to hell. Without waiting for Katerina Depin to finish her last words, Storm, expressionless, raised his fist and punched down. Click. Accompanied by a clear sound of bone cracking. Katerina Depin's vicious and cruel eyes then lost their last bit of luster. Crescent Moon Hunter, die. This is hell. A big brand new trophy popped up in front of Storm's eyes. Diamond Trophy, Katerina Depin. Trophy star rating, 6 stars. It is different from the ordinary diamond trophy. Every diamond on this 6-star trophy glows scarlet, just like a rare blood diamond. Blood Diamond Trophy. Death Trophy. As mentioned before, the abilities of the big trophy are make a wish and add points. Usually, you can't have both. But the special Death Trophy, it can be used to add points and also to make a wish. Time was limited, and Storm had no time to check the wishing effect of this special Blood Diamond Trophy. He manipulated the clay until it covered the entire cell. It also obscured his and Katerina Depin's figures. Storm took out the fruit he had prepared in advance and pointed the devil ring at Katerina Depin's heart. With the experience of the last devil fruit rebirth experiment, Storm can now transfer the power of the clay fruit without transferring it in advance. At the same time, use the devil ring to absorb the power of other devil fruits. Storm first used the devil ring to absorb the power of the devil fruit from Katerina Depin. Then he directed this energy and transferred it to the fruit in his hand. As time continues to pass, the fruit in Storm's hand underwent a very special change in shape. The brilliant golden yellow replaced the original fruit color. Strips of strange-shaped flesh that look like tails slowly grow from the bottom of the fruit, supporting the fruit like a support. If you count carefully, this fruit looks like a fox with 9 tails. Animal system dog fruit, mythical beast, 9-tailed fox form. Finally got the target mythical beast devil fruit. A hint of joy suddenly flashed across Storm's face. He placed the 9-tailed fox fruit on his shoulder. The little white dragon, who had been following him silently, had ripples on its belly, and sucked the fruit in. This is the 9-tailed fox fruit, plus the previous chameleon fruit. There are already 2 animal-type devil fruits stored in the little white dragon's round belly. Storm removed the clay barrier and was about to run to the next target. An urgent reminder from the Shemale King came from his Den Mushi. Magellan and Shiryu have already dealt with the fake in the Red Lotus Hell. They have now discovered the abnormal situation in the Infinite Hell. 2 people are coming towards you. Storm was silent for a moment. Then you can start taking action too. Hey. Tiki. Where's Tiki? In the new transvestite paradise, Ivankov asked the Den Mushi. Such a big incident happened in the prison, why didn't I see Teach? In Ivankov's opinion, Edward Teach, who inherited Whitebeard's strength and spirit, is definitely a powerful helper at this time. But by 3 cannot be seen in the Red Lotus Hell. Even in the Infinite Hell, by 3 cannot be seen. This guy can't just hide at this critical moment, right? Impossible. Ivankov was puzzled. But there was no more reply from Storm through the Den Mushi. The only response Ivankov received was the continuous roar of explosions. Ivankov looked at the Infinite Hell screen that was being displayed on the surveillance camera Den Mushi, and saw Storm continuing to bombard the criminals. Huge and ferocious white dragon heads grew out from the depths of the earth. With their bloody mouths wide open, they launched an indiscriminate saturation bombardment on the prisoners in the Infinite Hell. Vongala Storm. You bastard. Ivankov put down the Den Mushi, his big face filled with solemn emotions. Your plan is definitely not what you said at the beginning. Previously, Edward Teach told the Shemale King that he wanted to select the most powerful subordinates from the criminals in the Infinite Hell. But Ivankov looked at the scene in the Infinite Hell. Is this selecting subordinates? This is clearly the execution of a criminal. Ivankov looked at the posture that Storm was displaying. This guy seems to want to kill all the criminals in the Infinite Hell. At this time, Lightning, who was standing nearby, spoke softly. Master Eva, do you really want to obey the orders of the chief jailer? It's not that I want to listen to him, but I have to listen to him. Ivankov said helplessly. He raised his hand and pointed at the figure inside the surveillance den Mushy. If I don't intercept Magellan and Shilio, then the entire 5.5th floor will be sunk into infinite hell. Vongala Storms, Clay Fruit, has awakened. He can definitely do something like this. By then, the entire new Shemale paradise will be ruthlessly destroyed. Ivankov went to intercept Magellan and Shiryu of the Rain, and he was the only one who was sacrificed. If he doesn't take action, the entire new Shemale paradise will be buried with him. The lesser of two evils. It was not difficult for Ivankov to make the decision. Lady Eva. Lightning quietly clenched his fists. At this moment, his heart was filled with self-blame and anger. He blames himself for not being able to help Ivankov. Angry at the Vongala Storm for persecuting them at will. But at the critical moment, Lightning managed to keep calm and asked, Lady Eva, should we take this opportunity to leave Impel Down? As soon as these words came out, Ivankov immediately showed an interested expression. But in the end he shook his head. The time has not come yet. Dorag has not started the operation yet. There is no need for us to escape from prison for the time being. The Shemale King made the final decision and took a deep breath. Okay, Lightning, I've made up my mind. Just let me intercept those two bastards Magellan and Shilu. Ivankov was full of ambition 1 second, but showed a treacherous expression the next. But I'm not as strong as that bastard Vongala Storm. So, there's no telling how long it can be delayed. Hee-ha. Just as Ivankov was preparing to act, a Shemale who was in charge of observing the surveillance footage suddenly spoke up to remind him. Lady Eva, it seems that there is some conflict between Magellan and Shiryu. They are acting separately. Separate actions. Ivankov was startled and immediately moved closer to the surveillance screen. How can this be considered separate actions? Shilu stayed alone in the Red Lotus Hell, and only Magellan came down. Haha. The elevator has been completely blocked by Vongala Storm, and now he has to climb the stairs. There's one less enemy to face. This is great news. On the other side, the Red Lotus Hell. Magellan found that the elevator was completely blocked by clay, so he had to rush to the prison staircase. Just now, he and Shiryu teamed up to deal with the clay clone that kept recovering no matter how hard they hit it. The patrolling prison guards immediately reported the news such as, the monitoring room was destroyed, and, the infinite hell was invaded. At that moment, Magellan realized that all the riots in the prison today were related to the new chief prisoner Storm. Vongala Storm. Magellan rushed into the connecting stairs between the Red Lotus Hell and the Beast Hell, and rushed to the 6th level of the infinite hell at the fastest speed. What on earth do you want to do? Are you planning to destroy Impel Down? Moving on legs alone was too slow, so Magellan ran for a while and then directly released his own fruit ability. The sticky and slippery purple venom gushed out of Magellan's body and covered the entire staircase in the blink of an eye. Poisonous way. Magellan stepped on the venom and, with the help of the venom's lubricating effect, rushed down like flying. It didn't take long. Magellan came from the 1st level of the Red Lotus Hell to the 5th level of the Extreme Cold Hell. Just when the director wanted to make a final push and rush directly into the Infinite Hell. At the entrance of the stairs to Infinite Hell, stood a burly figure. The people who would appear at the stairs of Infinite Hell at this time would definitely not be prison staff. Magellan subconsciously stopped and looked at the person opposite him. Ambryo Ivankov. Why are you here? After seeing the figure clearly, Magellan's pupils shrank a little instantly. According to the prison records, you should have died in the extremely cold hell. As the director of Impel Down, you don't even know whether the prisoners in the prison are dead or alive. Ivankov put his hands on his hips and winked in Magellan's direction. Then you are really derelict in your duty. The moment the words fell, Ivankov blinked sharply at Magellan. Death winks. A strong blast of wind rushed out from in front of Ivankov and hit the stairs in front of Magellan. Under the bombardment of this shock wave, a large gap was instantly blown out in the stairs covered with venom. Even if you want to delay time here. There was no fluctuation in Magellan's expression. The thick purple venom formed a terrifying poisonous dragon behind him. Even Vongala Storm will never be able to escape from the infinite hell. No matter what method the Demon King used, he avoided the eyes and ears of the prison staff. In Magellan's opinion, all those who would block his route at this time were Vongala Storm's accomplices. That being the case, then execute them all together. Poison Dragon. It's too late, but it's soon. Magellan controlled the poisonous dragon and launched a thunderous attack on the Demon King. The Demon King had no time to dodge and was hit directly by the poisonous dragon on his huge face. A blinding puff of smoke appeared on Ivankov's face. There was also a crackling corrosion sound accompanying it. Oh dash! Ivankov fell to his knees and uttered a heart-wrenching wail. He wanted to cover his face with his hands, but was afraid of coming into contact with the venom. My face. My face is going to be melted by the venom. My face. Before Magellan could understand the battle situation clearly. Next moment, Ivankov yanked his face off. That big face that was still emitting smoke looked like a terrifying venom mask. It's impossible to melt. Ha ha. Ivankov, who was unharmed, gave Magellan a bright and cheerful smile. Because I was wearing a lot of makeup. You were fooled. Magellan watched Ivankov's face-changing performance as venom continued to flow out of his body like cold sweat. A boring trick. In the blink of an eye, the number of poisonous dragons behind Magellan increased from 1 to 3. The venomous dragons with bared fangs and claws kept twisting their bodies in the air, and each of them exuded deadly poison. I don't have the extra time to stay here and play with you. Magellan controlled the 3 poisonous dragons and ordered them to rush forward and attack Ivankov from different angles. Ivankov seemed to be unable to react in time and was bitten by 3 poisonous dragons. Purple poison spots quickly spread across the surface of his body. Ivankov fell to the ground wailing again. This time, he never stood up to perform his unique face-changing skill. This is the punishment you will receive, rioter. Magellan walked up to Ivankov and looked down at the figure on the ground. In the next 24 hours, you will continue to be corroded by the venom and then fall into endless hell. In Magellan's view, Ivankov was as good as dead after being poisoned by the poison dragon. He passed directly Ivankov, who was poisoned, and continued to rush towards the infinite hell. As Magellan got closer, the roar of the explosion became clearer and clearer. It was not until Magellan finally entered the infinite hell that he could see the scene inside the infinite hell clearly. The ground was covered with dragon head turrets, which constantly fired at the prisoners in the cells. Except for a very small number of prisoners with strong strength. Most of the prisoners in the cells were no longer moving. Magellan didn't know whether all the criminals were dead. Maybe, possibly, perhaps, they are all dead. Looking at the scene in front of him, which looked like a slaughterhouse, Magellan's eyes were bloodshot. His eyes instantly locked onto the only figure still moving freely in the infinite hell. Vongala Storm. Magellan was extremely angry, and a steady stream of venom gushed out like a flash flood. What do you think of life, Director? Storm stopped and looked at the person who came. It's just cleaning up the garbage. Would anyone think it's inappropriate?